Cut the noise. Get ruthless with your time and energy. We live in the most distracting era in history. The average person checks their phone over 100 times a day. Notifications, pings, breaking news, endless scrolling. Our minds are being hijacked 24/7. The truth is, most people are no longer living on their own schedule. They're living on the schedule of every app, every alert, and every demand from the outside world. And the price is steep: fractured focus, drained energy, and goals that remain untouched. But here's the key: time and energy are not truly lost. They're wasted. Think about it: every hour spent doom scrolling, every burst of mental fuel burned on things that don't matter, is energy that could have been invested in building the life you actually want. Distraction doesn't just steal minutes, it steals momentum. This book is about getting ruthless. Not busy. Not productive for the sake of checking boxes. Ruthless. With what gets your time, your attention, and your energy. Inside, you'll learn how to silence the noise, identify your highest value actions, and build boundaries so strong that distraction can't break through. By the end, you won't just feel more focused, you'll have a system for protecting your most valuable resources from a world that's constantly trying to steal them. This is your manual for taking your time and energy back. If you're finding value in these insights on transforming pressure into performance, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. Grab the book of Cut the Noise, get ruthless with your time and energy, and learn how to protect what matters most, your time and energy. Perfect for your commute, workout, or whenever you need a reality check on where your focus is going. Or pick up the book if you want to underline, highlight, and revisit the strategies that'll help you reclaim your life. Check out the description below. Chapter 1: The Hidden Enemies of Focus. In our hyper-connected world, we have become accustomed to believing that noise is merely the cacophony of sounds that assault our ears, the honking of traffic, the chatter of colleagues, or the relentless ping of notifications. However, the most insidious forms of noise operate far below the surface of our conscious awareness, systematically dismantling our ability to think clearly, act decisively, and live purposefully. True noise encompasses far more than auditory distractions. It is the invisible interference that fragments your attention, scatters your thoughts, and dilutes your potential. This chapter will illuminate the 4 primary categories of noise that are sabotaging your success and stealing your peace: mental, emotional, digital, and social noise. Mental noise. Mental noise manifests as the constant stream of thoughts, worries, and mental chatter that prevents you from achieving clarity and focus. It is the relentless internal commentary that evaluates, judges, and second-guesses every decision. This mental static includes the endless loop of unfinished tasks cycling through your mind, creating a persistent sense of incompletion and anxiety. Research from Harvard University demonstrates that the average person has approximately 70,000 thoughts per day, with the majority being repetitive and unproductive. These mental reruns consume precious cognitive resources that could be channeled toward meaningful work. The planning paradox, where you spend more time thinking about what you need to do than actually doing it. Your mind becomes a cluttered warehouse of intentions, ideas, and half-formed plans, none of which advance your actual progress. This mental hoarding creates the illusion of productivity while delivering none of its benefits. Decision fatigue compounds mental noise by forcing your brain to process countless trivial choices throughout the day. From selecting what to wear to determining which email to answer first, these micro-decisions accumulate cognitive debt that leaves you mentally exhausted before you tackle your most important work. Emotional noise. Emotional noise represents the undercurrent of feelings, reactions, and emotional states that cloud your judgment and impair your performance. Unlike mental noise, which operates in the realm of thoughts, emotional noise strikes at your core sense of well-being and stability. Fear-based thinking generates a constant background hum of anxiety about potential failures, rejections, and disappointments. This emotional noise manifests as the voice that whispers, "What if?" scenarios, creating elaborate catastrophes that exist only in your imagination yet feel completely real in your body. Unresolved conflicts and relationships drain emotional energy through a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive load. When you carry the weight of unfinished conversations, unexpressed feelings, or damaged relationships, your emotional bandwidth becomes consumed by background processing of these unresolved issues. Comparison culture feeds emotional noise by creating a perpetual sense of inadequacy. Social media platforms have weaponized comparison, delivering carefully curated glimpses into others' highlight reels while you're intimately aware of your own behind-the-scenes struggles. This constant measuring against others generates emotional static that interferes with your ability to appreciate your own progress and achievements. Digital noise, the attention hijackers. Digital noise represents perhaps the most aggressive and intentionally designed form of distraction in human history. Technology companies employ teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, and addiction specialists to create products that capture and monetize your attention. Notification pollution has transformed our devices into instruments of interruption. The average smartphone user receives 80 to 100 notifications daily, with each interruption requiring an average of 23 minutes to fully regain focus, according to research from the University of California, Irvine. These digital intrusions fragment your attention into increasingly smaller segments, making deep work and sustained concentration nearly impossible. Information overload presents itself as the illusion of staying informed while actually creating confusion and paralysis. The human brain, evolved to process limited amounts of information, now confronts an endless stream of news, updates, opinions, and data points. This constant consumption creates the feeling of being busy and engaged while producing no tangible progress toward your goals. The dopamine slot machine effect turns everyday digital interactions into addictive behaviors. Apps are designed with variable reward schedules, the same psychological principle that makes gambling addictive. Each notification, like, or message provides a small hit of dopamine, training your brain to crave these digital rewards and seek them compulsively. Social noise. Social noise emerges from the relationships, interactions, and social dynamics that drain your energy and derail your focus. This category of noise is particularly challenging because it often disguises itself as normal social engagement or professional obligation. Energy vampires are individuals who consistently take more emotional energy than they provide. These people approach every conversation as an opportunity to download their problems, complaints, and negative perspectives onto others. Time spent with energy vampires leaves you feeling depleted, pessimistic, and emotionally drained. Obligation overload occurs when you become the default solution for others' problems and requests. Without clear boundaries, you become a magnet for interruptions, favors, and quick questions that collectively consume hours of your time and significant mental energy. These social intrusions prevent you from maintaining sustained focus on your priorities. Group dynamics and consensus culture create social pressure to participate in activities, meetings, and discussions that add little value to your life or work. The fear of appearing antisocial or uncooperative drives participation in time-wasting activities that serve no purpose beyond maintaining social harmony. The compound effect of noise. These four categories of noise rarely operate in isolation. Instead, they compound and amplify each other, creating a web of distraction that becomes increasingly difficult to escape. Mental noise makes you more susceptible to emotional triggers. Emotional turbulence drives you to seek digital distractions. Digital overload impairs your ability to set social boundaries. Social obligations generate more mental and emotional noise. This cycle creates what researchers term attention residue, the mental fragments of one task that linger when you attempt to focus on another. Each source of noise leaves residual static that accumulates throughout your day, progressively degrading your ability to think clearly, make decisions, and perform at your highest level. The true cost of noise. The impact of noise extends far beyond mere inconvenience or mild distraction. Chronic exposure to noise in all its forms fundamentally alters your brain's architecture and capacity for sustained attention. Neuroscientist Dr. Adam Gazzaley's research demonstrates that constant task switching and interruption literally rewire neural pathways, making focused attention increasingly difficult to achieve and maintain. The productivity drain is measurable and severe. Studies indicate that knowledge workers are interrupted every 11 minutes on average and require up to 25 minutes to return to their original task. This means that in an 8-hour workday, you may never achieve more than 11 minutes of uninterrupted focus, insufficient time for any meaningful cognitive work. Beyond productivity, noise erodes your sense of accomplishment, progress, and personal satisfaction. When your attention is constantly fragmented, you struggle to experience the deep satisfaction that comes from completing meaningful work. This lack of fulfillment creates a vicious cycle where you seek more stimulation and activity to fill the void, generating additional noise in the process. Breaking free from the noise trap. Recognition represents the first step toward liberation. By understanding how mental, emotional, digital, and social noise operate in your life, you begin to develop the awareness necessary to identify and interrupt these patterns. Awareness alone does not solve the problem, but it provides the foundation for the systematic approach to noise reduction that will be detailed in subsequent chapters. The journey toward a low-noise lifestyle requires both defensive strategies to block incoming distractions and offensive strategies to create environments and systems that support sustained focus. This is not about achieving perfect silence or complete isolation. It is about becoming intentional and ruthless about what deserves access to your attention and energy. Your ability to identify and eliminate noise will determine whether you spend your life reacting to external demands or creating something meaningful from your unique talents and perspective. The choice is yours, but it requires action, commitment, and the courage to live differently than the distracted masses around you. Chapter 2. Your time is being stolen. Time theft is not a victimless crime. You are both the victim and, unknowingly, often the accomplice. Every day, precious hours of your finite existence are systematically extracted by forces that have learned to disguise theft as necessity, obligation, and social convention. The most insidious aspect of this robbery is that it occurs with your implicit permission, making you complicit in the very crime that undermines your potential and sabotages your dreams. Understanding where your time disappears is the first step toward reclaiming control over your most valuable resource. This chapter will expose the primary culprits responsible for time theft and provide you with the knowledge and tools necessary to protect your calendar with the vigilance your success demands. The Great Productivity Lie. Perhaps no concept has done more damage to human productivity than the glorification of multitasking. This seemingly efficient approach to work has been thoroughly debunked by neuroscience research, yet it continues to be celebrated as a mark of professional competence and personal capability. The human brain is neurologically incapable of performing multiple cognitive tasks simultaneously. What we call multitasking is actually task switching, rapidly shifting attention between different activities. Each switch requires your brain to reorient, refocus, and rebuild context for the new task. This cognitive overhead, known as switching costs, can reduce productivity by up to 40% according to research from Carnegie Mellon University. Dr. Earl Miller, a neuroscientist at MIT, explains that multitasking creates a neurological traffic jam where information moves slowly and processing becomes inefficient. When you attempt to juggle multiple tasks, your brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones that cloud thinking and impair memory formation. This biochemical response explains why multitasking sessions often leave you feeling exhausted while producing substandard work. The quality penalty of multitasking extends beyond immediate productivity losses. Work produced while task switching contains more errors, lacks depth, and fails to demonstrate your true capabilities. This creates a professional credibility deficit where your actual skills become obscured by the mediocre output generated through fragmented attention. Consider the executive who simultaneously responds to emails during conference calls while reviewing quarterly reports. None of these activities receives full attention, resulting in missed email details, poor meeting participation, and superficial report analysis. The time saved through multitasking is more than offset by the time required to correct errors, clarify miscommunications, and reduce substandard work. The meeting industrial complex. Modern organizations have developed an addiction to meetings that borders on pathological. The average executive spends 37% of their time in meetings, while middle managers dedicate nearly 35% of their workweek to this single activity. This epidemic of excessive meetings represents one of the most significant sources of institutional time theft in professional environments. Ineffective meetings proliferate because they create the illusion of progress without requiring the difficult work of actual decision-making and execution. Meetings allow participants to feel busy and engaged while avoiding the accountability that comes with individual contribution and measurable results. The true cost of meetings extends far beyond the time spent in conference rooms. Each meeting generates preparation time, follow-up activities, and context-switching overhead. A 1-hour meeting with 6 participants doesn't cost 1 hour, it costs 6 hours of collective productivity, plus additional time for pre-meeting preparation and post-meeting processing. Status meetings represent a particularly toxic form of time theft. These gatherings serve no purpose beyond satisfying managerial anxiety about project visibility. Participants spend valuable time preparing updates about work they could be doing instead of talking about. The information shared in status meetings could be communicated more efficiently through written updates or project management systems. The meeting about the meeting phenomenon further compounds this waste. Organizations often hold preparatory meetings to prepare for actual meetings, creating layers of bureaucratic theater that consume exponential amounts of time while producing linear amounts of value. When should becomes must. Social and professional obligations represent a subtle but pervasive form of time theft that operates through psychological manipulation rather than direct coercion. These obligations disguise themselves as necessary components of professional success or social harmony, when in reality they serve primarily to distribute your time among competing interests that provide little value to your core objectives. Professional networking events exemplify obligatory time theft. These gatherings promise valuable connections and opportunities while delivering superficial conversations and business card exchanges that rarely translate into meaningful relationships or tangible benefits. The time investment required, including travel, attendance, and follow-up activities, typically far exceeds any value generated. Volunteer committees and professional associations create ongoing time commitments that persist long after their initial purpose has been served. Many professionals accumulate these obligations throughout their careers without ever conducting a cost-benefit analysis of their continued participation. The result is a calendar filled with recurring commitments that consume time without advancing personal or professional goals. Social obligations operate through guilt and fear-based manipulation. The dinner invitation you accept despite having no desire to attend. The birthday party that requires an entire weekend sacrifice. The holiday traditions that have become burdensome rituals rather than joyful celebrations. These activities persist because saying no feels antisocial or ungrateful, even when participation generates resentment and stress. The interruption economy. Modern work environments have been engineered to maximize interruption and minimize sustained focus. Open office designs, instant messaging systems, and cultures of constant availability have created an interruption economy, where your attention becomes a commodity consumed by others' immediate needs and desires. The average knowledge worker is interrupted every 11 minutes, according to research from the University of California, Irvine. Each interruption triggers a cognitive reset that can require up to 25 minutes to recover fully. This means that in a typical 8-hour workday, you may never achieve more than 11 minutes of uninterrupted focus, insufficient time for meaningful cognitive work. Colleagues who frame their interruptions as quick questions represent particularly insidious time thieves. These brief intrusions seem harmless because they don't consume large blocks of time, but their cumulative impact is devastating. 10. 2-minute questions. Throughout the day don't cost 20 minutes, they cost hours when you account for context-switching overhead and focus recovery time. The expectation of immediate responsiveness has created a culture where delayed responses to emails, messages, and requests are interpreted as unprofessional or uncooperative. This artificial urgency transforms normal business communication into a series of emergency interruptions that fragment attention and prevent deep work. Email has evolved from a communication tool into a task management system that operates according to other people's priorities rather than your own. The average professional spends 2.6 hours daily managing email, time that could be invested in creative, strategic, or revenue-generating activities that advance personal and organizational objectives. The calendar as battlefield. Your calendar represents the physical manifestation of your priorities and values. Every appointment, meeting, and commitment reflects a decision about how you value your time relative to external demands. When you fail to protect your calendar with appropriate vigilance, you surrender control over your most valuable resource to whoever requests it most persistently. The path of least resistance leads to a calendar filled with other people's priorities rather than your own. Without deliberate intervention, your schedule becomes a collection of reactive commitments that serve external agendas while neglecting your most important work. This reactive approach to calendar management guarantees that you will spend your life addressing urgent matters rather than important ones. Double booking and overscheduling represent forms of temporal self-harm that create stress, reduce performance, and damage professional relationships. The inability to accurately estimate time requirements, or the unwillingness to create buffer time between activities leads to a perpetual state of running late and feeling overwhelmed. The failure to schedule your most important work creates a situation where your highest value activities must compete for whatever time remains after other commitments have been satisfied. This backwards approach to time allocation ensures that your most crucial work receives your least focused attention and energy. The technology trap. Digital tools that promise to save time often become sophisticated mechanisms for time theft. These applications and platforms generate artificial urgency, create addictive interaction patterns, and transform productive work time into consumption-based activities that provide no lasting value. Social media platforms employ teams of addiction specialists and behavioral economists to maximize engagement, a euphemism for the amount of time and attention they can extract from users. These platforms use variable reward schedules, social validation mechanisms, and artificial scarcity to create compulsive usage patterns that operate below conscious awareness. News consumption has evolved from periodic information gathering into constant anxiety generation. The 24-hour news cycle creates artificial urgency around events that have no direct impact on your life or work. Time spent consuming news about situations you cannot influence represents pure time theft, resources extracted without providing any actionable value. Productivity applications paradoxically reduce productivity by creating the illusion of progress through task organization rather than task completion. Many professionals spend more time managing their productivity systems than actually completing productive work. The perfect task management setup becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination that delays actual accomplishment, while providing a sense of preparation and control. Reclaiming your stolen time. Time protection requires both defensive strategies to prevent theft and offensive strategies to reclaim control over your schedule and attention. This is not about achieving perfect efficiency or eliminating all external demands. It is about becoming intentional and ruthless about how you allocate your irreplaceable time. The first step involves conducting a comprehensive time audit to identify where your hours actually go versus where you believe they go. Most people dramatically underestimate time spent on low-value activities and overestimate time invested in meaningful work. Accurate measurement provides the foundation for informed decision-making about time allocation. Calendar protection requires treating your schedule as a strategic asset rather than a public resource. This means blocking time for your most important work, creating buffer periods between commitments, and learning to say no to requests that don't align with your priorities. The reclamation of stolen time is ultimately about reclaiming your life. Every hour you successfully protect from theft is an hour you can invest in activities that align with your values, advance your goals, and contribute to your long-term fulfillment and success. Chapter 3: Energy is more valuable than time. The conventional wisdom about productivity focuses obsessively on time management, while ignoring the more fundamental resource that determines the quality and impact of your work: energy. You can have abundant time available yet accomplish nothing meaningful if your energy reserves are depleted, scattered, or misaligned with your activities. Conversely, when your energy is properly managed and strategically deployed, you can achieve extraordinary results even within limited time constraints. This paradigm shift from time management to energy management represents one of the most significant breakthroughs in personal productivity and professional performance. Energy management acknowledges the fundamental truth that not all hours are equal. The quality of your attention, focus, and engagement varies dramatically throughout the day and across different types of activities. Understanding your personal energy architecture. Human energy operates across 4 distinct dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Each dimension follows its own patterns of depletion and renewal, and optimal performance requires careful attention to all 4 components. Neglecting any single dimension creates energy leaks that undermine your overall capacity and effectiveness. Physical energy represents the foundation upon which all other forms of energy rest. Your body's energy systems, cardiovascular, hormonal, and neurological, directly influence your cognitive capacity, emotional stability, and spiritual well-being. Physical energy is governed by circadian rhythms, sleep quality, nutrition, hydration, and movement patterns that either support or sabotage your daily performance. The circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock, creates predictable patterns of alertness and fatigue throughout a 24-hour cycle. Most individuals experience peak cognitive performance during the morning hours, with a secondary peak in early evening and a pronounced dip in mid-afternoon. Understanding your personal energy cycles allows you to align your most demanding work with your periods of peak physical and mental energy. Sleep quality exerts perhaps the greatest influence on daily energy levels. Research from Harvard Medical School demonstrates that even modest sleep deprivation, as little as 1 hour less than optimal, reduces cognitive performance by up to 25%. Sleep debt accumulates over time, creating a compound energy deficit that cannot be overcome through willpower or caffeine consumption. Mental energy represents your cognitive capacity to focus, analyze, create, and make decisions. This form of energy is finite and depletes throughout the day as you engage in cognitively demanding activities. Decision-making, problem-solving, and creative work consume mental energy at dramatically different rates, and understanding these patterns allows for more strategic energy allocation. The concept of decision fatigue illustrates how mental energy depletion occurs. Every decision you make, regardless of its significance, consumes a portion of your cognitive resources. This explains why successful individuals like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg adopted uniform wardrobes. Eliminating trivial daily decisions preserves mental energy for more important cognitive work. Complex cognitive tasks require not just mental energy but also sustained attention and working memory capacity. Deep work, the kind of focused, high-value cognitive activity that produces exceptional results, can only be sustained for limited periods, typically 90 to 120 minutes for most individuals. Attempting to extend deep work sessions beyond your cognitive capacity results in rapidly diminishing returns and accumulated mental fatigue. The hidden performance factor. Emotional energy represents your capacity to engage positively with others, maintain enthusiasm for your work, and navigate interpersonal relationships effectively. This dimension of energy is often overlooked in productivity discussions, yet it profoundly influences your ability to collaborate, lead, and maintain motivation over extended periods. Emotional energy is heavily influenced by your relationships, environment, and internal emotional state. Toxic relationships, negative work environments, and unresolved conflicts create ongoing emotional drain that limits your capacity for positive engagement and creative thinking. Conversely, supportive relationships, inspiring environments, and emotional clarity generate energy that enhances performance across all dimensions. The emotional contagion effect means that you literally absorb the emotional states of people around you. Spending time with negative, pessimistic, or energy-draining individuals depletes your emotional reserves and influences your own outlook and performance. This biological reality makes relationship management a critical component of energy management. Emotional regulation skills, your ability to manage stress, maintain equanimity under pressure, and recover from setbacks, directly influence your energy sustainability. Individuals with well-developed emotional regulation skills maintain consistent performance levels even during challenging periods, while those lacking these skills experience dramatic energy fluctuations that undermine their effectiveness. The motivation engine. Spiritual energy encompasses your sense of purpose, connection to meaningful work, and alignment between your values and activities. This dimension provides the motivation and drive that sustains effort over time, particularly during challenging periods when external rewards are insufficient to maintain momentum. Purpose-driven work generates energy rather than depleting it. When your activities align with your deeper values and contribute to objectives you find meaningful, you experience increased motivation, focus, and satisfaction. This energy generation effect explains why individuals can work tirelessly on passion projects while feeling drained by routine professional obligations. The alignment between personal values and daily activities creates either energy generation or energy depletion. Activities that conflict with your core values, even when they offer external rewards, create internal resistance and energy drain. Conversely, activities that express your values generate intrinsic motivation and sustained energy. Connection to something larger than yourself, whether through service to others, contribution to important causes, or participation in meaningful communities provides renewable spiritual energy that sustains long-term effort and commitment. This connection serves as an energy reservoir during periods when other energy sources are depleted. Energy vampires and energy generators. Understanding the distinction between activities, relationships, and environments that drain energy versus those that generate it is crucial for optimal energy management. Energy vampires systematically extract your resources without providing adequate value in return, while energy generators restore and amplify your capacity for high performance. Relationship energy vampires include individuals who consistently take more than they give, engage in chronic complaining without seeking solutions, create drama and conflict, or demand emotional support while offering none in return. These relationships create ongoing energy leaks that accumulate over time, significantly reducing your available resources for meaningful work and relationships. Professional energy vampires manifest as toxic colleagues, dysfunctional organizational cultures, and work environments that prioritize politics over performance. Jobs that require you to act against your values, suppress your authentic self, or engage in meaningless activities create sustained energy drain that eventually leads to burnout and disengagement. Environmental energy vampires include cluttered spaces, noisy environments, and settings that create stress rather than supporting focus and creativity. Your physical environment exerts a subtle but constant influence on your energy levels, either supporting optimal performance or creating ongoing low-level stress that depletes your resources. Energy generators provide the opposite effect, restoring and amplifying your capacity rather than depleting it. Relationships with positive, supportive individuals who share your values and encourage your growth generate emotional and spiritual energy. Challenging work that utilizes your strengths and contributes to meaningful objectives generates mental and spiritual energy. Environments that support focus, creativity, and well-being generate physical and emotional energy. The energy audit process. Conducting a comprehensive energy audit involves systematically evaluating how different activities, relationships, and environments influence your energy levels across all 4 dimensions. This process requires honest self-assessment and careful observation of your energy patterns over time. Begin by tracking your energy levels throughout the day using a simple scale, 1 to 10, for each of the 4 energy dimensions. Note which activities, interactions, and environments correlate with energy increases versus decreases. Pay particular attention to subtle patterns that may not be immediately obvious. Identify your personal energy cycles and peak performance periods. Most individuals have consistent patterns of high and low energy periods throughout the day and week. Understanding these cycles allows you to align your most demanding work with your periods of peak capacity while scheduling energy-generating activities during low-energy periods. Evaluate your relationships using energy criteria. Assess which individuals consistently leave you feeling energized and inspired versus those who leave you feeling drained and depleted. This analysis may reveal surprising patterns about relationships you assumed were positive but actually consumed significant energy. Analyze your work activities to identify which tasks generate energy through engagement and accomplishment versus those that deplete energy through frustration, boredom, or misalignment with your strengths. This information provides guidance for role optimization and career development decisions. Building energy generation systems. Sustainable high performance requires systematic approaches to energy generation rather than relying solely on natural energy reserves. These systems involve creating habits, routines, and practices that consistently restore and amplify your energy across all 4 dimensions. Physical energy generation systems include optimized sleep routines, strategic nutrition timing, regular movement throughout the day, and stress management practices. These foundational habits provide the energy platform that supports all other activities and should be treated as non-negotiable components of your daily routine. Mental energy generation involves practices such as meditation, learning new skills, engaging in creative activities, and taking strategic breaks from cognitively demanding work. Mental stimulation that differs from your primary work activities can actually restore mental energy rather than depleting it. Emotional energy generation systems include cultivating positive relationships, practicing gratitude, engaging in activities that bring joy, and creating emotional boundaries with energy-draining situations. Building emotional resilience and regulation skills also contributes to sustainable emotional energy. Spiritual energy generation involves connecting with your sense of purpose, engaging in service to others, spending time in nature, and reflecting on your values and their expression through your daily activities. These practices provide the motivation and meaning that sustain long-term effort and commitment. Energy-based decision-making. Once you understand your energy patterns and have systems in place for energy generation, you can begin making decisions based on energy impact rather than just time requirements or external expectations. This shift in decision-making criteria dramatically improves both performance and satisfaction. Calendar management from an energy perspective involves scheduling your most energy-demanding work during peak energy periods while reserving low-energy times for routine tasks or energy-generating activities. This approach maximizes the quality and impact of your most important work while ensuring sustainable performance over time. Project selection based on energy considerations evaluates not just the time investment required but also the energy impact of different opportunities. Projects that align with your strengths, values, and interests generate energy while advancing your objectives, creating a sustainable cycle of high performance. Relationship management through an energy lens means investing time and emotional resources in relationships that provide mutual energy generation while minimizing exposure to relationships that consistently drain your resources without adequate value exchange. Career development decisions evaluated through energy criteria consider not just compensation and advancement opportunities but also the energy sustainability of different roles, organizations, and career paths. This perspective often reveals why seemingly attractive opportunities may ultimately prove unfulfilling or unsustainable. Chapter 4: The Art of Saying No. The word, no, possesses a power that most people never fully realize or harness. In a world that demands constant availability, perpetual yes-saying, and boundless accommodation, the ability to say no with confidence and clarity becomes a superpower that separates high achievers from those who remain trapped in reactive mediocrity. Saying no is not merely about declining requests or opportunities. It is about taking sovereign control over your time, energy, and attention. Every time you say yes to something, you are simultaneously saying no to everything else you could be doing with that same resource. The question is not whether you will say no, but whether you will make that choice consciously and strategically, or allow it to happen by default through poor planning and weak boundaries. Understanding your default settings. Human beings are evolutionarily programmed to seek approval and avoid social rejection. This biological imperative served our ancestors well in small tribal communities where social exclusion meant potential death. However, in modern society, this same drive to please and accommodate creates a psychological trap that prevents optimal decision-making and resource allocation. The need for approval manifests as an unconscious bias towards saying yes, even when doing so conflicts with your best interests or most important priorities. This people-pleasing tendency is reinforced by social conditioning that equates helpfulness with virtue and cooperation with professional competence. Many individuals have never learned to distinguish between being helpful and being exploited, between being collaborative and being taken advantage of. Fear of missing out, FOMO, represents another psychological driver of excessive yes-saying. The modern world presents an overwhelming array of opportunities, experiences, and possibilities, creating anxiety about making the wrong choice or missing the perfect opportunity. This fear paradoxically leads to overcommitment and the inability to fully engage with any single opportunity. The sunk cost fallacy compounds poor decision-making by making it difficult to say no to ongoing commitments even when they no longer serve your objectives. People continue investing time and energy in activities, relationships, and projects simply because they have already invested in them, regardless of their current value or future potential. The hidden costs of yes. Every yes carries both visible and hidden costs that extend far beyond the immediate time commitment. Understanding these comprehensive costs is essential for making informed decisions about where to invest your finite resources. Opportunity cost represents the value of the best alternative you forego when you commit to a particular activity. When you say yes to attending a networking event, you are simultaneously saying no to spending that time on strategic planning, skill development, family relationships, or personal renewal. The true cost of any commitment is not just what you invest, but what you sacrifice. Cognitive load increases with each additional commitment, even when individual activities seem manageable. Your brain must track, plan, and prepare for each obligation, consuming mental energy that could be directed toward higher value activities. This background processing creates a persistent state of mental fragmentation that reduces your capacity for deep thinking and creative work. Context switching costs accumulate as you move between different commitments, relationships, and activities. Each transition requires time and energy to reorient, remember relevant details, and rebuild focus. Multiple commitments create a calendar of constant transitions that prevent sustained engagement with any single priority. Quality degradation occurs when you spread your attention across too many activities. Rather than delivering excellence in a few areas, you provide mediocre performance across many areas. This dilution of effort undermines your reputation, reduces your satisfaction, and limits your potential for breakthrough achievements. The strategic power of no. Saying no is not a defensive action, it is the most powerful offensive strategy available for creating the life and career you desire. Every strategic no clears space for a more important yes. Every boundary you establish protects resources that can be invested in activities aligned with your highest priorities and deepest values. Warren Buffett, one of history's most successful investors, attributes much of his success to saying no to attractive opportunities that did not meet his strict criteria. His famous quote, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything," illustrates the transformative power of selective commitment. Saying no allows you to say yes to excellence. When you commit to fewer activities, you can invest more time, energy, and attention in each commitment, producing superior results that enhance your reputation and create compound returns on your investment. Quality always trumps quantity in building lasting success and satisfaction. Strategic no-saying creates scarcity around your time and attention, which paradoxically increases their perceived value. When you are selective about your commitments, people value your participation more highly and approach you with higher quality opportunities that better align with your objectives. The anatomy of an effective no. Saying no effectively requires both emotional conviction and tactical skill. The most powerful no's are delivered with clarity, respect, and finality, leaving no room for negotiation or manipulation while maintaining positive relationships and professional reputation. Immediate response prevents the psychological trap of false consideration. When you delay responding to requests you intend to decline, you create mental energy drain through ongoing consideration and increase the likelihood of eventual capitulation due to guilt or pressure. Immediate no's, delivered with kindness but firmness, save time and energy for both parties. Clear reasoning without extensive justification strikes the optimal balance between respect and boundary maintenance. A brief explanation of why you cannot accommodate the request demonstrates consideration for the requester while avoiding lengthy justifications that invite negotiation or argument. Examples include, "This doesn't align with my current priorities," or, "I don't have the bandwidth to give this the attention it deserves." Alternative suggestions, when appropriate, demonstrate goodwill while maintaining your boundaries. Recommending other individuals who might be able to help or suggesting different approaches to achieving the requester's objectives shows that your no comes from resource limitations rather than lack of caring. Future availability parameters set expectations for similar requests. Statements like, "I'm not taking on new projects until after the first quarter," or, "I'm focusing exclusively on family time on weekends," provide clear guidelines that prevent repeated requests and reduce the need for multiple individual no's. Overcoming no-saying obstacles. Several psychological and social obstacles make saying no more difficult than it appears. Understanding and preparing for these challenges increases your success rate and reduces the emotional difficulty of boundary maintenance. Guilt represents the most common emotional obstacle to effective no-saying. This guilt often stems from the mistaken belief that you are responsible for solving other people's problems, or that your value as a person depends on your willingness to accommodate every request. Overcoming guilt requires recognizing that saying no to inappropriate requests actually serves everyone's best interests by allowing you to be fully present for appropriate commitments. Fear of disappointing others prevents many people from setting necessary boundaries. This fear is typically overblown. Most reasonable people understand and respect clear boundaries when they are communicated with kindness and consistency. Those who react poorly to your boundaries are revealing more about their character than yours. Social pressure and manipulation tactics require preparation and resolve to resist effectively. Some individuals will attempt to override your boundaries through guilt trips, emotional manipulation, or appeals to loyalty and friendship. Recognizing these tactics and preparing standard responses prevents you from being caught off guard and making decisions you will later regret. The illusion of future availability leads many people to say yes to future commitments they would never accept today. Future you faces the same time and energy constraints as present you, and overcommitting your future self creates ongoing stress and performance degradation. Make decisions based on your actual capacity, not your optimistic projections. Building a no-saying practice. Effective boundary setting requires deliberate practice and systematic development of both skills and emotional resilience. Like any important capability, saying no becomes easier and more natural through consistent application and refinement. Start with low-stakes situations to build confidence and skill. Practice saying no to small requests, minor social obligations, and low-pressure situations. This allows you to develop your no-saying muscles without risking important relationships or professional opportunities. Develop standard responses for common requests. Having prepared language for typical situations reduces decision fatigue and increases consistency in your boundary maintenance. Create templates for declining meetings, social invitations, volunteer requests, and professional opportunities that don't align with your priorities. Create decision criteria that guide your yes/no choices. Establish clear standards for evaluating requests based on alignment with your goals, energy requirements, opportunity cost, and strategic value. These criteria remove emotion from decision-making and provide objective grounds for saying no. Practice the physical act of saying no. Many people have difficulty saying the word no due to social conditioning. Practice saying it out loud in various contexts until it becomes comfortable and natural. The physical ability to articulate the word clearly and confidently is essential for effective boundary setting. The compound returns of strategic no-saying. The benefits of developing strong no-saying capabilities compound over time, creating increasingly powerful returns on your initial investment in boundary development. These compound returns manifest across multiple dimensions of life and work. Time abundance emerges as you eliminate low-value commitments and protect your calendar for high-impact activities. This abundance allows for deeper engagement with your priorities, more thoughtful decision-making, and greater satisfaction from your chosen commitments. Energy sustainability results from reducing energy-draining activities and relationships. As you become more selective about your commitments, your available energy increases, allowing for higher performance and greater resilience in pursuing your most important objectives. Reputation enhancement occurs as your selective commitment pattern becomes known. People begin to view your participation as more valuable precisely because it is less readily available. This reputation shift attracts higher quality opportunities that better align with your objectives. Personal satisfaction increases as your activities become more aligned with your values and priorities. When you spend your time on chosen commitments rather than default acceptances, you experience a greater sense of agency, purpose, and fulfillment. Advanced no-saying strategies. Beyond basic boundary setting, advanced practitioners develop sophisticated strategies for managing complex social and professional situations that require nuanced approaches to saying no. The preemptive no involves communicating your boundaries before requests are made. By clearly stating your availability, priorities, and focus areas, you reduce the number of inappropriate requests you receive while demonstrating leadership and intentionality. The collaborative no acknowledges the validity of a request while explaining why you cannot accommodate it and offering alternative solutions or resources. This approach maintains relationships while protecting your boundaries. The conditional no accepts requests contingent on specific modifications that make them more aligned with your objectives. For example, I can't attend the full conference, but I could participate in the keynote panel if the timing works with my schedule. The delayed decision involves requesting time to consider significant requests rather than feeling pressured to respond immediately. This prevents reactive yes saying while allowing for thoughtful evaluation of the request's alignment with your priorities. No as a leadership tool. Leaders must be particularly skilled at saying no because their decisions affect not just their own resources, but also their team's time, energy, and focus. Effective leadership requires the courage to say no to attractive opportunities that would distract from the organization's core mission and strategic objectives. Saying no to scope creep protects project integrity and team morale. When leaders consistently accept additional requirements without adjusting timelines or resources, they create unsustainable expectations and compromise quality standards. Saying no to low-priority initiatives demonstrates strategic thinking and protects organizational focus. Teams perform better when they can concentrate on a limited number of high-impact priorities rather than spreading their efforts across numerous competing objectives. Saying no to cultural pressures maintains organizational values and standards. Leaders who accommodate every request for exceptions or shortcuts gradually erode the standards that define their organization's culture and performance expectations. Chapter 5: Digital Detox. Reclaiming your attention. Your attention has been weaponized against you. Every day, sophisticated algorithms designed by teams of neuroscientists, behavioral economists, and addiction specialists compete for control of your most precious resource, your conscious awareness. These digital platforms have transformed from useful tools into attention-harvesting machines that profit by keeping you scrolling, clicking, and consuming rather than thinking, creating, and living. The battle for your attention is not a fair fight. On one side, you have your finite willpower and good intentions. On the other side, you face billion-dollar corporations employing the most advanced understanding of human psychology and addiction science to capture and monetize your mental bandwidth. The outcome of this battle will determine whether you live as the author of your own experience, or as a passive consumer of content designed to keep you distracted and disengaged from your actual life. The neuroscience of digital addiction. Understanding how digital platforms hijack your brain's reward systems is essential for developing effective countermeasures. These platforms exploit fundamental neurological processes that evolved for survival but become destructive when manipulated by artificial stimuli. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with seeking and reward anticipation, plays a central role in digital addiction. Contrary to popular belief, dopamine is not released when you experience pleasure, it is released when you anticipate pleasure. This distinction is crucial because it explains why digital platforms focus on creating anticipation rather than satisfaction. The variable reward schedule employed by social media platforms mimics the psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You never know when you will receive a like, comment, or message, so your brain maintains a state of heightened anticipation, continuously releasing dopamine to motivate continued checking behavior. This creates a neurochemical dependency that operates below conscious awareness. Intermittent reinforcement. The unpredictable delivery of rewards creates the strongest behavioral conditioning known to psychology. Digital platforms have perfected this technique, delivering occasional social validation, interesting content, or important messages mixed with long periods of mundane or disappointing information. This pattern creates compulsive checking behavior that persists even when the user consciously wants to stop. The mere presence of your smartphone, even when turned off, reduces cognitive performance by approximately 10% according to research from the University of Chicago. Your brain allocates background processing power to monitoring the device for potential notifications, creating a persistent state of partial attention that prevents deep focus and clear thinking. How your focus became a product. Digital platforms operate on a business model that treats human attention as a commodity to be harvested and sold to advertisers. Understanding this economic reality reveals why these platforms prioritize engagement over user well-being and why their interests fundamentally conflict with your productivity and mental health. The attention economy incentivizes platforms to maximize time on site and engagement, rather than providing genuine value or enhancing user satisfaction. Features like infinite scroll, autoplay videos, and algorithmic content feeds are specifically designed to prevent natural stopping points and keep users consuming content indefinitely. Surveillance capitalism, as described by researcher Shoshana Zuboff, represents a new economic model where your personal data, behavioral patterns, and attention become raw materials for generating profit. Every click, scroll, and pause is monitored, analyzed, and used to refine algorithms that predict and influence your future behavior. The attention merchants have discovered that negative emotions, outrage, fear, anxiety, and indignation generate higher engagement rates than positive emotions. This discovery has led to algorithmic amplification of divisive, polarizing, and emotionally triggering content, creating a media environment that systematically promotes psychological distress and social conflict. The paradox of choice creates analysis paralysis in digital environments where infinite options are available. Streaming services with thousands of movies, news feeds with unlimited articles, and social media with endless scrolling create cognitive overload that leads to passive consumption rather than active, intentional engagement. The hidden costs of digital overwhelm. The impact of digital overwhelm extends far beyond the time spent actively using devices. The cognitive residue from digital stimulation creates lasting effects that impair performance, relationships, and well-being even during offline activities. Attention residue occurs when fragments of your attention remain focused on digital stimuli even after you have stopped using devices. The anticipation of potential notifications, the memory of interesting content, and the habit of reaching for devices create background mental noise that prevents complete engagement with present-moment activities. The comparison trap is systematically reinforced by social media algorithms that show you carefully curated highlights from other people's lives while you are intimately aware of your own struggles and mundane daily experiences. This asymmetric information creates persistent feelings of inadequacy and dissatisfaction that undermine confidence and motivation. Decision fatigue accumulates as you make countless micro-choices throughout the day about what to click, read, watch, and share. These seemingly trivial decisions consume the same cognitive resources needed for important life choices, leaving you mentally depleted for activities that actually matter. Sleep disruption occurs through multiple mechanisms. The blue light from screens interferes with melatonin production, the stimulating content activates your nervous system, and the habit of late-night scrolling delays sleep onset. Poor sleep quality compounds all other negative effects of digital overwhelm. Relationship degradation happens as digital communication partially replaces face-to-face interaction, reducing the depth and quality of human connections. The phenomenon of continuous partial attention means that even when physically present with others, your awareness is divided between the people in front of you and the digital world in your pocket. The information overload crisis. The human brain evolved to process limited amounts of information from local environments. Modern digital environments expose you to more information in a single day than your ancestors encountered in months or years, creating systematic overload that impairs judgment, decision-making, and emotional regulation. News consumption has evolved from periodic information gathering into constant anxiety production. The 24-hour news cycle creates artificial urgency around events that have no direct relevance to your life or circumstances. Time spent consuming news about situations you cannot influence represents pure cognitive waste, mental resources expended without generating any actionable value. The illusion of being informed masks the reality of being overwhelmed. Consuming large quantities of information creates the feeling of knowledge and awareness while actually producing confusion and paralysis. Most news consumption fails to meet basic criteria for valuable information. It is neither actionable nor relevant to your personal circumstances and goals. Information hoarding, the tendency to save articles, videos, and resources for later, creates digital clutter that mirrors physical clutter's negative effects on mental clarity. Browser bookmarks, saved social media posts, and downloaded content create the illusion of progress while generating background anxiety about unfinished consumption. The expertise illusion occurs when easy access to information creates false confidence in your knowledge and understanding. Quick internet searches provide surface-level information that feels like comprehension but lacks the depth and integration necessary for genuine expertise or wise decision-making. Building digital boundaries. Effective digital detox requires systematic boundary creation rather than relying on willpower to resist sophisticated addiction mechanisms. These boundaries must be designed to work automatically, reducing the number of conscious decisions required to maintain healthy digital habits. Device-free zones create physical spaces associated with focused work, meaningful relationships, or personal restoration. Bedrooms, dining rooms, and home offices can be designated as spaces where devices are not permitted, allowing for genuine rest, connection, and productivity. Time-based boundaries establish specific periods for digital engagement and offline activity. This might include device-free mornings for creative work, offline evenings for family time, or technology Sabbaths for reflection and renewal. These temporal boundaries prevent digital activities from expanding to fill all available time. App auditing involves systematically evaluating every application on your devices based on its contribution to your goals and well-being. Apps that primarily serve entertainment, social comparison, or passive consumption should be evaluated critically and often eliminated entirely. Notification management requires turning off all non-essential alerts and establishing specific times for checking messages and updates. The goal is to transition from reactive, interrupt-driven communication to proactive, scheduled communication that respects your priorities and schedule. Creating information diets. Just as physical health requires careful attention to nutritional intake, mental health requires intentional curation of information consumption. Information diets involve selecting high-quality, relevant content while eliminating junk information that provides no lasting value. Curated information sources focus on quality over quantity, selecting a small number of high-value sources rather than trying to stay informed about everything. This might involve subscribing to one excellent newsletter instead of following dozens of news sources, or reading books written by experts rather than consuming brief social media summaries. Scheduled consumption prevents information from interrupting focused work and allows for deeper engagement with valuable content. Setting specific times for reading news, checking social media, or consuming educational content creates boundaries that prevent information consumption from becoming a constant background activity. The relevance filter requires asking specific questions about any information before consuming it. How does this relate to my current goals? Can I take action based on this information? Will this knowledge be valuable next week, next month, or next year? Information that fails these tests should be ignored, regardless of how interesting or entertaining it might seem. Source verification becomes critical in an environment where misinformation and manipulated content are widespread. Developing the habit of checking sources, seeking multiple perspectives, and distinguishing between opinion and fact protects you from being influenced by inaccurate or biased information. The power of boredom. One of the most significant casualties of digital overwhelm is boredom, a mental state that, contrary to popular belief, is essential for creativity, self-reflection, and psychological well-being. The constant availability of digital stimulation has virtually eliminated boredom from modern life, with profound consequences for mental health and creative capacity. Boredom serves as a reset mechanism for your brain, allowing the default mode network to activate and engage in background processing, memory consolidation, and creative thinking. When you eliminate boredom through constant stimulation, you also eliminate these essential cognitive processes. The creativity connection between boredom and innovation is well documented in psychological research. Many breakthrough ideas emerge during periods of mental downtime when the conscious mind is not actively engaged in problem solving. Constant digital stimulation prevents this mental downtime and significantly reduces creative output. Self-reflection requires periods of mental quiet that allow you to process experiences, evaluate progress toward goals, and consider important life decisions. Digital distraction prevents this reflection by keeping your mind constantly focused on external stimuli rather than internal awareness. Emotional processing occurs during quiet mental periods when you can feel and integrate your emotions rather than constantly distracting yourself from them. The habit of reaching for digital devices whenever you feel uncomfortable prevents emotional maturity and self-awareness. Practical digital detox strategies. Implementing effective digital boundaries requires specific tactics and systematic approaches that work with human psychology rather than against it. These strategies should be implemented gradually to ensure sustainability and long-term success. The smartphone setup involves optimizing your device to support your goals rather than undermine them. This includes organizing apps to create friction for time-wasting applications, using grayscale mode to reduce visual appeal, and removing social media apps entirely in favor of browser-based access that requires more intentional engagement. Morning and evening routines should be completely device-free to protect your most psychologically vulnerable periods. Morning device use immediately fragments your attention and reactivity, while evening use interferes with sleep quality and prevents proper mental transition to rest. The 24-hour rule requires waiting a full day before engaging with any content that triggers strong emotional reactions. This cooling-off period prevents impulsive sharing, commenting, or engaging with inflammatory content that serves no productive purpose. Batch processing consolidates similar digital activities into specific time blocks rather than allowing them to interrupt throughout the day. This might involve checking email twice daily, scrolling social media for 15 minutes in the evening, or consuming news once weekly instead of continuously. Chapter 6. Declutter your life. The relationship between your external environment and your internal mental state is far more profound than most people realize. Physical clutter creates cognitive load that operates below conscious awareness, systematically draining your mental energy and impairing your ability to think clearly, make decisions, and maintain focus. Every object in your environment competes for your attention, even when you are not actively looking at it. This chapter will guide you through the systematic elimination of physical, digital, and commitment clutter that accumulates in modern life. The goal is not minimalism for its own sake, but the creation of environments and lifestyles that support clarity, creativity, and purposeful action rather than distraction and overwhelm. The neuroscience of clutter. Your brain processes visual information continuously, even when you are not consciously paying attention to your surroundings. Cluttered environments create what neuroscientists call cognitive overload, a state where your brain must work harder to process relevant information while filtering out irrelevant visual noise. Research from UCLA's Center for Everyday Lives and Families found that people living in cluttered homes had higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, throughout the day. The constant low-level stress created by disorganized environments impairs cognitive function, emotional regulation, and physical health over time. Visual cortex studies demonstrate that cluttered spaces make it more difficult to process information efficiently. When your environment contains numerous competing visual elements, your brain must work harder to focus on specific tasks, leading to faster mental fatigue and reduced cognitive performance. The decision fatigue created by cluttered environments compounds throughout the day. Each visible object represents a potential decision point. Should you organize it, use it, move it, or ignore it? These micro-decisions accumulate cognitive debt that leaves you mentally depleted for more important choices and tasks. Clutter also impairs working memory, the cognitive system responsible for temporarily holding and manipulating information during complex tasks. When your environment is disorganized, your brain allocates processing power to managing environmental chaos rather than focusing on the task at hand. Physical clutter manifests in obvious forms: messy desks, overflowing closets, and cluttered living spaces in subtle forms that are often overlooked but equally damaging to mental clarity and productivity. Workspace clutter directly impairs professional performance by creating visual distraction and increasing the time required to locate necessary materials. A Princeton University study found that people demonstrated better focus and improved information processing when working in organized environments compared to cluttered ones. The broken windows theory applies to personal environments as well as public spaces. Small amounts of clutter create psychological permission for additional disorganization, leading to a gradual degradation of environmental standards that compound over time. One messy corner becomes a cluttered room, which becomes a disorganized home. Hidden clutter, the contents of closets, drawers, and storage areas, creates psychological weight even when not visible. Knowing that your possessions are disorganized creates background mental tension and makes it difficult to fully relax in your own space. This hidden chaos contributes to feelings of being overwhelmed and out of control. The acquisition trap occurs when people attempt to solve organizational problems through purchasing additional storage solutions, organizational products, or more efficient systems. However, the root problem is usually excess possessions rather than inadequate organization, making purchase-based solutions counterproductive. Sentimental clutter presents unique challenges because emotional attachments override practical considerations. Items kept for memories, or just in case, often serve no functional purpose but consume physical and mental space. Learning to distinguish between meaningful mementos and clutter requires developing new criteria for what deserves space in your life. Digital clutter. Digital clutter is often invisible but creates the same cognitive burden as physical disorganization. The average computer user has thousands of files scattered across their system without any systematic organization, making information retrieval slow and stressful. Email clutter affects millions of people who maintain inboxes containing thousands or tens of thousands of messages. This digital chaos creates persistent background anxiety and makes it difficult to find important communications when needed. The mental energy required to process overwhelming email volumes significantly reduces productivity and increases stress. Photo and media accumulation on personal devices creates massive digital collections that are never organized, edited, or enjoyed. The typical smartphone user has thousands of photos stored on their device, most of which will never be viewed again. This digital hoarding creates the same psychological burden as physical clutter while consuming device storage and slowing performance. Browser bookmark collections often contain hundreds or thousands of saved links that represent good intentions rather than actual value. These digital to-do lists create the illusion of productivity while generating background anxiety about unfinished consumption and unorganized information. Social media clutter includes following accounts that no longer provide value, maintaining connections with people who drain energy, and participating in groups or communities that generate noise rather than meaningful engagement. This relationship clutter creates information overload and emotional drain that impairs well-being. Document and file disorganization makes it difficult to locate important information when needed, creating stress and wasted time. Without systematic naming conventions and folder structures, digital files become as chaotic and unhelpful as physical clutter. Schedule and commitment clutter. Perhaps the most damaging form of clutter is the accumulation of commitments, obligations, and activities that no longer serve your priorities or contribute to your goals. This temporal clutter fragments your attention and prevents sustained focus on your most important work. Calendar clutter manifests as overbooked schedules filled with meetings, appointments, and activities that provide little value relative to their time investment. Many people's calendars become repositories for other people's priorities rather than reflections of their own strategic objectives. Recurring obligations continue consuming time and energy long after their initial purpose has been fulfilled. Committee memberships, volunteer positions, and social commitments accumulate over time without periodic evaluation of their continued value and alignment with current priorities. The obligation creep occurs when small commitments gradually expand in scope and time requirements without explicit agreement. A quick coffee meeting becomes a monthly obligation, or a small favor becomes an ongoing expectation that consumes significant resources. Social clutter includes relationships and activities maintained primarily through guilt, habit, or social pressure rather than genuine value or enjoyment. These relationships and activities drain energy without providing corresponding benefits, creating emotional and social burdens that impair well-being. Project accumulation occurs when people start multiple initiatives without completing existing ones, creating a mental inventory of unfinished business that generates persistent background stress and prevents full engagement with any single project. The systematic decluttering process. Effective decluttering requires systematic approaches that address root causes rather than just surface symptoms. This process must be comprehensive, addressing physical, digital, and temporal clutter simultaneously to prevent one form of chaos from recreating others. The category-based approach, popularized by Marie Kondo, involves decluttering by type of item rather than by location. This method allows you to see the full scope of each category and make more informed decisions about what to keep, donate, or discard. The energy audit approach evaluates every possession, commitment, and digital element based on its energy impact rather than its practical utility. Items and activities that drain energy without providing corresponding value should be eliminated, regardless of their potential usefulness or cost. The one-year rule provides practical criteria for elimination decisions. Anything not used or engaged within the past 12 months should be considered for removal. This rule acknowledges that theoretical utility is less important than actual usage patterns. The replacement test asks whether you would choose to acquire or commit to something if you encountered it today. Items purchased years ago or commitments made in different circumstances may no longer align with your current priorities and lifestyle. The opportunity cost evaluation considers what you could do with the space, time, and energy currently consumed by clutter. Physical space could be used for activities you enjoy, time commitments could be redirected toward priorities, and mental energy could be focused on creative and productive work. Creating systems for sustained simplicity. Decluttering is not a one-time event but an ongoing practice that requires systems and habits to prevent the reaccumulation of physical, digital, and temporal clutter. The one-in one-out rule maintains balance by requiring the removal of one item for every new item acquired. This simple system prevents the gradual accumulation that leads to renewed clutter, while encouraging more thoughtful acquisition decisions. Regular review cycles establish periodic evaluation of possessions, commitments, and digital assets. Monthly reviews can address recent accumulation, while quarterly reviews can assess larger patterns and make strategic adjustments to prevent overwhelming buildup. Digital maintenance routines include weekly email processing, monthly photo organization, and quarterly file system cleanup. These small, regular investments prevent massive organizational projects that become overwhelming and delay action. The immediate decision rule requires making keep/discard decisions the first time you handle any item rather than returning it to temporary storage. This prevents the accumulation of decision postponement that creates persistent clutter. Acquisition mindfulness involves establishing criteria and waiting periods before purchasing new items or accepting new commitments. This prevents impulsive decisions that contribute to future clutter and ensures that new additions align with your priorities. The psychological benefits of simplicity. The benefits of systematic decluttering extend far beyond improved organization and visual appeal. Simplified environments and lifestyles create profound psychological changes that enhance well-being, productivity, and life satisfaction. Mental clarity improves dramatically when environmental distractions are eliminated. With fewer competing visual elements and mental obligations, your brain can allocate more resources to deep thinking, creative problem-solving, and sustained focus on important work. Decision confidence increases when you have fewer options to consider and less complexity to manage. Simplified environments and schedules reduce decision fatigue and allow for more thoughtful, strategic choices about how to invest your time and energy. Stress reduction occurs through multiple mechanisms: reduced visual stimulation, decreased organizational demands, and fewer maintenance requirements. Simplified lifestyles require less ongoing management, freeing mental and physical energy for more meaningful activities. Creative capacity expands when your environment and schedule provides space for reflection, experimentation, and artistic expression. Clutter-free spaces feel more inviting for creative work and allow your mind to wander freely without being constantly pulled toward organizing or managing possessions. Emotional well-being improves as you eliminate sources of visual stress, reduce maintenance burdens, and create environments that support relaxation and renewal. Simplified spaces feel more peaceful and allow for genuine rest rather than constant low-level activation from environmental chaos. Advanced decluttering strategies. Beyond basic organization, advanced practitioners develop sophisticated approaches to creating and maintaining simplified lifestyles that support their highest priorities and deepest values. The capsule approach applies to various life areas: clothing, kitchen items, work materials, and digital tools. By maintaining carefully curated collections of high-quality, versatile items, you reduce decision fatigue while ensuring that everything you own serves multiple purposes and aligns with your lifestyle. Seasonal decluttering acknowledges that your needs and priorities change throughout the year. Regular seasonal reviews allow you to adjust your possessions and commitments to reflect current circumstances rather than maintaining items and obligations from previous life phases. The energy mapping technique involves tracking how different spaces, possessions, and commitments affect your energy levels throughout the day. This data-driven approach to decluttering ensures that you eliminate the most energy-draining elements while preserving and enhancing energy-generating aspects of your environment. Digital decluttering automation uses technology tools to maintain simplified digital environments without ongoing manual effort. This includes email filters that automatically organize incoming messages, cloud storage systems that archive old files, and app limitations that prevent the accumulation of digital clutter. Overcoming decluttering obstacles. Several psychological and practical obstacles commonly prevent people from creating and maintaining simplified environments and lifestyles. Understanding and preparing for these challenges increases success rates and prevents backsliding. Scarcity mindset drives people to keep items, just in case they might be needed someday. This fear-based thinking ignores the costs of storage, maintenance, and decision-making while overestimating the probability and consequences of future need. Overcoming scarcity mindset requires developing confidence in your ability to acquire what you need when you actually need it. Sunk cost fallacy prevents people from eliminating possessions or commitments simply because they have already invested money, time, or energy. This backwards-looking approach ignores current utility and future opportunity costs. Effective decluttering focuses on forward-looking value rather than past investment. Identity attachment occurs when possessions become symbols of personal identity, past achievements, or future aspirations. Books represent intelligence, exercise equipment represents fitness commitment, and hobby supplies represent creative potential. Learning to separate identity from possessions allows for more objective evaluation of what actually serves your current life. Guilt and obligation prevent elimination of gifts, inherited items, and sentimental objects that no longer provide value. These emotional attachments often represent respect for relationships rather than genuine appreciation for the objects themselves. Healthy decluttering involves honoring relationships while recognizing that physical objects are not required to maintain emotional connections. Perfectionism paralysis occurs when people delay decluttering because they cannot achieve complete organization immediately. This all-or-nothing thinking prevents incremental progress and maintains the status quo. Effective decluttering embraces imperfect action over perfect inaction. The ripple effects of simplified living. The benefits of systematic decluttering extend far beyond immediate environmental improvements, creating positive ripple effects that enhance multiple dimensions of life and work. Relationship improvements often result from simplified living as you have more time and energy for meaningful connections with family and friends. Reduced maintenance burdens and decision fatigue leave more emotional bandwidth for nurturing important relationships. Financial benefits emerge through reduced spending on organizational products, storage solutions, and impulse purchases. Simplified living often reduces overall consumption while increasing satisfaction with chosen purchases. The clarity that comes from organized finances also supports better long-term financial decision-making. Health improvements result from simplified meal planning, easier home maintenance, and reduced stress from environmental chaos. Organized spaces support healthier habits by making it easier to prepare nutritious food, exercise regularly, and maintain personal care routines. Professional benefits include improved focus at work, easier project management, and enhanced professional reputation through better organization and follow-through. Simplified personal lives create more energy and mental clarity for professional excellence. Creating your decluttering action plan. Successful decluttering requires a systematic approach that addresses the most impactful areas first while building momentum through early successes. This strategic approach prevents overwhelm while ensuring measurable progress towards simplified living. Begin with high-impact, low-resistance areas that provide immediate benefits and build confidence for more challenging decluttering projects. Clearing your desk, organizing your email inbox, or decluttering your car can provide quick wins that motivate continued progress. The 15-minute rule involves dedicating 15 minutes daily to decluttering activities, preventing overwhelming weekend projects while maintaining steady progress. This approach makes decluttering a sustainable habit rather than an overwhelming periodic event. Category completion involves fully decluttering one category of items before moving to the next. This prevents the half-finished projects that create additional visual chaos while ensuring that each area receives complete attention. Progress documentation through before and after photos or written reflections helps maintain motivation and provides accountability for continued progress. Visual evidence of improvement reinforces the benefits of simplified living and encourages continued effort. Chapter 7: Ruthless Prioritization. In a world of infinite possibilities and limited time, your ability to distinguish between what matters and what merely seems urgent will determine the trajectory of your life and the magnitude of your impact. Prioritization is not simply about organizing your to-do list, it is about making strategic decisions that compound over time to create extraordinary results rather than ordinary busyness. Most people approach prioritization passively, allowing external demands and immediate pressures to dictate their focus and energy allocation. This reactive approach guarantees mediocrity because it ensures that your time gets invested in whatever shouts loudest rather than what matters most. Ruthless prioritization requires the courage to disappoint some people, ignore some opportunities, and say no to some good things in service of the few great things that align with your deepest values and highest objectives. The myth of equal importance. The human mind has a tendency to treat all tasks, requests, and opportunities as roughly equivalent in importance. This cognitive bias, known as the equality heuristic, leads people to approach their work and life as if every item on their list deserves equal attention and energy. In reality, the distribution of impact follows power law distributions rather than normal distributions. This means that a small percentage of activities, typically 10 to 20%, produce a disproportionately large percentage of results, typically 80 to 90%. The remaining activities provide minimal impact despite consuming significant time and energy. This unequal distribution of impact exists across all domains of life. A few relationships provide most of your emotional support and growth. A few skills generate most of your professional value. A few investments produce most of your financial returns. A few experiences create most of your meaningful memories. The failure to recognize and act on this inequality principle leads to what productivity expert Greg McKeown calls the paradox of success. As you become more capable and accomplished, you receive more opportunities and requests. Without ruthless prioritization, success creates overwhelming demand that prevents continued excellence in your most important areas. Recognizing that not all activities are equal is the first step towards strategic thinking. The second step is developing systematic approaches for identifying the few activities that produce disproportionate returns and organizing your life around maximizing those high-impact areas. The 80-20 principle in action. The Pareto principle, commonly known as the 80-20 rule, provides a powerful framework for identifying high-impact activities across all areas of life. This principle suggests that roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes, though the exact percentages may vary. In professional contexts, 80% of your results typically come from 20% of your activities. This means that most of your workday is spent on activities that produce minimal impact while a small fraction of your time generates the majority of your value creation. Identifying these high-impact activities and systematically increasing the time allocated to them can dramatically improve your professional performance and career trajectory. In personal relationships, 80% of your emotional support, growth, and satisfaction comes from approximately 20% of your relationships. This doesn't mean that other relationships are unimportant, but it does suggest that strategic investment in your most meaningful relationships produces disproportionate returns in well-being and life satisfaction. In learning and skill development, 80% of your competence in any area comes from mastering 20% of the fundamental skills and knowledge. This principle suggests focusing intensively on core competencies rather than trying to achieve broad but shallow competence across many areas. In financial management, 80% of your wealth accumulation typically results from 20% of your investment and savings decisions. The few major financial decisions, career choices, major purchases, investment strategies have far greater impact than numerous small financial optimizations. The key to applying the 80-20 principle is regularly auditing your activities to identify which ones produce disproportionate returns and which ones consume time without generating corresponding value. This analysis should be conducted across different time horizons, daily, weekly, monthly, and annually to capture both immediate and long-term impact patterns. The Eisenhower Matrix. One of the most powerful tools for strategic prioritization is the Eisenhower Matrix, which categorizes activities based on their urgency and importance. This framework reveals how most people spend their time reacting to urgent matters rather than investing in important activities that create lasting value. Quadrant I contains activities that are both urgent and important, true crises that require immediate attention. While these activities cannot be avoided, effective prioritization involves minimizing the time spent in crisis mode by investing more energy in prevention and preparation. Quadrant 2 represents activities that are important but not urgent, strategic planning, relationship building, skill development, and health maintenance. These activities rarely demand immediate attention but create the most significant long-term impact on life satisfaction and success. High achievers spend most of their time in Quadrant 2 activities. Quadrant 3 includes activities that are urgent but not important. Most interruptions, many phone calls, some emails, and various social obligations. These activities feel important because they demand immediate attention, but they rarely contribute to your strategic objectives or personal fulfillment. Quadrant 4 contains activities that are neither urgent nor important, time-wasting activities like excessive social media consumption, mindless television viewing, and other forms of escapism. While everyone needs some downtime, excessive Quadrant 4 activities indicate poor time management and lack of strategic focus. The goal of strategic prioritization is to minimize time spent in Quadrants 3 and 4 while maximizing time invested in Quadrant 2 activities. This shift requires the discipline to ignore seemingly urgent but unimportant demands while proactively scheduling time for important but non-urgent activities that create lasting value. Value-based prioritization. Beyond tactical frameworks, ruthless prioritization requires alignment between your daily activities and your deepest values and long-term objectives. This alignment ensures that your time investment produces not just external results, but also internal satisfaction and sense of purpose. Values clarification involves identifying the principles and qualities that matter most to you, independent of external expectations or social pressures. These values serve as decision-making criteria that guide prioritization choices when faced with competing opportunities or demands. The values-actions gap measures the distance between what you claim to value and how you actually spend your time. Most people discover significant disconnection between their stated priorities and their actual time allocation. Closing this gap requires deliberate restructuring of daily and weekly schedules to ensure adequate time for values-aligned activities. Long-term objective clarity provides direction for short-term prioritization decisions. Without clear long-term goals, daily prioritization becomes reactive and opportunistic rather than strategic and purposeful. Effective prioritization requires regular connection between daily activities and multi-year objectives. The opportunity cost lens evaluates every commitment against the best alternative use of that time and energy. This perspective reveals the true cost of saying yes to any activity, not just what you invest, but what you sacrifice by not investing those resources elsewhere. Legacy thinking considers how current prioritization decisions will compound over months and years to create your eventual life story. This long-term perspective helps distinguish between activities that feel important in the moment, but lack lasting significance, and those that may seem less urgent but create enduring value. The art of strategic neglect. Ruthless prioritization necessarily involves strategic neglect, the conscious decision to underperform or ignore certain areas in order to excel in more important areas. This concept challenges the cultural myth that you can have it all and do it all at the same time. Strategic neglect requires accepting that excellence in any domain demands focused investment that necessarily reduces performance in other domains. Attempting to optimize everything simultaneously leads to mediocrity across all areas rather than excellence in the most important ones. The good versus great distinction recognizes that many good opportunities prevent you from pursuing great opportunities because they consume resources without providing proportional returns. Learning to say no to good opportunities becomes essential for creating space for great ones. Seasonal prioritization acknowledges that different life phases and career stages require different focus areas. What deserves priority during your 20s may require neglect during your 40s, and what demands attention during career building may become less important during family raising. The perfectionism trap occurs when people delay action on important priorities because they lack sufficient time or resources to address them perfectly. Strategic neglect involves accepting imperfect progress on important areas rather than perfect performance on unimportant ones. Systems for maintaining priorities. Effective prioritization requires systematic approaches that operate automatically rather than relying on daily willpower and decision-making to maintain focus on what matters most. Calendar blocking involves scheduling specific times for your highest priority activities before other commitments can consume those hours. This proactive approach ensures that important work receives protected time rather than competing for whatever hours remain after other obligations. The priority stack involves organizing your task lists with clear hierarchy rather than treating all items equally. High-priority items receive immediate attention and energy, while lower-priority items are addressed only after more important work is completed. Regular priority reviews, daily, weekly, and quarterly ensure that your focus remains aligned with your values and objectives as circumstances change. These reviews prevent priority drift that gradually redirects energy toward less important, but more immediate demands. Energy priority alignment matches your highest energy periods with your most important work. Since energy levels fluctuate throughout the day and week, strategic scheduling ensures that your peak capacity is devoted to your highest priorities rather than routine tasks. The single-tasking principle involves focusing completely on one priority at a time rather than attempting to multitask across several important areas simultaneously. This approach maximizes the quality and efficiency of work on each priority while reducing the stress and error rates associated with divided attention. Common prioritization mistakes. Understanding frequent prioritization errors helps avoid the traps that prevent most people from achieving strategic focus and extraordinary results. The urgency addiction occurs when people become psychologically dependent on the adrenaline and immediate feedback that comes from addressing urgent matters. This addiction makes it difficult to invest sustained attention in important but non-urgent activities that create lasting value. Priority inflation happens when too many activities are labeled as high priority, effectively making nothing a true priority. This categorization error prevents the tough decisions necessary for strategic focus and maintains the illusion of importance across too many areas. The availability heuristic leads people to overweight the importance of activities that are most visible or recent in memory while underweighting activities that are less visible but potentially more important. This bias favors activities that feel important over those that actually produce disproportionate results. Social pressure prioritization occurs when external expectations and demands override internal values and strategic objectives. This external focus prevents authentic prioritization and leads to time investment in activities that advance others' agendas rather than your own. The completion bias drives people to prioritize tasks based on ease of completion rather than importance or impact. This leads to busy work that creates the feeling of productivity while avoiding the challenging work that produces meaningful results. Advanced prioritization strategies. Beyond basic prioritization frameworks, high achievers develop sophisticated approaches that maximize impact while maintaining sustainable work and life practices. The multiplier effect evaluation considers not just the immediate impact of activities but also their potential to enable or amplify other important work. Activities that create capabilities, relationships, or resources for future high-impact work deserve priority even if their immediate returns appear modest. The regret minimization framework, popularized by Jeff Bezos, involves making decisions based on which choice you would least regret at the end of your life. This long-term perspective helps distinguish between activities that matter in the moment and those that will matter over decades. Energy-based prioritization considers not just the time requirements of different activities but also their energy impact. Activities that generate energy while producing results deserve higher priority than equally productive activities that deplete energy and reduce capacity for subsequent work. The constraint theory application identifies the single biggest bottleneck limiting progress toward your most important objectives. Focusing intensively on removing this constraint produces greater results than spreading effort across multiple less critical areas. Values-based scheduling involves designing your daily and weekly routines around expressing your most important values rather than simply accommodating external demands. This approach ensures that your life reflects your priorities rather than just responding to others' priorities. Chapter 8: Protecting Your Mental Space. Your mind is under siege. Every day, a relentless assault of negativity, comparison, and mental chaos attempts to colonize your thoughts, shape your self-perception, and hijack your emotional well-being. The quality of your mental environment determines the quality of your life more than any external circumstance, yet most people exercise less control over their mental input than they do over their physical diet. This chapter will teach you to become the sovereign ruler of your inner world, establishing boundaries that protect your mental space from toxic influences while cultivating thoughts and perspectives that support your highest potential and deepest well-being. The goal is not positive thinking or denial of reality, but the development of mental disciplines that allow you to think clearly, respond wisely, and maintain emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. The ecology of mental environment. Your mental environment operates like a biological ecosystem, where certain thoughts, influences, and mental habits either support or undermine the overall health of your psychological landscape. Just as physical environments can be toxic or nourishing, mental environments can either enhance or degrade your cognitive function, emotional stability, and creative capacity. Mental inputs, the information, conversations, media, and experiences you regularly consume shape your thought patterns, emotional baseline, and worldview through a process called cognitive priming. Your brain automatically absorbs and integrates environmental messages, often below conscious awareness, creating mental frameworks that influence subsequent thoughts and reactions. The neuroplasticity principle means that your brain physically reorganizes itself based on repeated mental patterns. Chronic exposure to negative mental inputs literally rewires your neural pathways to default toward pessimism, anxiety, and limitation. Conversely, consistent exposure to constructive mental inputs creates neural patterns that support optimism, resilience, and possibility thinking. Cognitive load theory demonstrates that your mental processing capacity is finite. Energy spent managing negative mental inputs, toxic relationships, inflammatory media, comparison triggers, reduces available cognitive resources for creative thinking, problem solving, and positive life creation. Protecting your mental environment is essentially about optimizing cognitive resource allocation. The compound effect applies to mental inputs just as powerfully as to financial investments. Small daily choices about what information, people, and experiences you allow into your mental space accumulate over time to create dramatically different psychological outcomes. The person who consistently consumes negative news and toxic social media will develop a fundamentally different mental landscape than someone who curates constructive, inspiring, and educational inputs. The mental environment polluters. Perhaps no factor influences your mental environment more powerfully than the people with whom you regularly interact. Relationships create ongoing mental and emotional input that shapes your thoughts, moods, and self-perception through constant micro-exposures that compound over time. Emotional contagion research demonstrates that you literally catch the emotions and mental states of people around you through unconscious mimicry of facial expressions, body language, and vocal patterns. This biological reality means that spending time with negative, pessimistic, or anxious people will influence your own emotional state regardless of your conscious intentions to remain unaffected. Energy vampires represent individuals who consistently drain your mental and emotional resources without providing corresponding value. These relationships are characterized by chronic complaining, victim mentality, and the expectation that you will provide unlimited emotional support while offering little reciprocal care or positive interaction. Drama creators thrive on conflict, crisis, and chaos, constantly generating unnecessary complications and emotional turmoil that consumes mental energy and fragments your attention. These individuals transform minor issues into major crises and seem incapable of maintaining peaceful, stable relationships or circumstances. Comparison triggers include people who consistently make you feel inadequate, unsuccessful, or less than through their achievements, lifestyle, or constant self-promotion. These relationships activate your insecurities and redirect mental energy towards self-doubt rather than self-improvement. The psychological concept of reference groups, the people you use as standards for comparison, profoundly influences your self-perception and aspirations. If your regular social circle consists of individuals who accept mediocrity, avoid challenges, and maintain limited thinking, their standards become your unconscious baseline for what is normal and achievable. Toxic relationship patterns persist because they often provide secondary benefits. Drama can feel exciting, helping others can make you feel needed, and familiar dysfunction can feel more comfortable than unknown possibilities. Recognizing these hidden payoffs is essential for making conscious relationship choices rather than unconscious emotional choices. The negative self-talk epidemic. The most toxic relationship you can have is with your own inner voice when it becomes dominated by self-criticism, doubt, and limitation-focused thinking. This internal negativity creates constant mental pollution that undermines confidence, creativity, and life satisfaction more effectively than any external criticism could achieve. The inner critic develops from internalized messages from parents, teachers, peers, and cultural conditioning. This mental voice claims to protect you from failure and social rejection by maintaining impossibly high standards and constantly highlighting potential problems and inadequacies. However, research shows that self-criticism actually decreases performance while increasing anxiety and depression. Catastrophic thinking involves mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios and creating elaborate disaster fantasies that exist only in imagination yet create real physiological stress responses. This mental habit trains your nervous system to remain in a state of chronic activation while consuming cognitive resources that could be directed toward constructive problem solving. Perfectionism represents a particularly damaging form of self-attack that prevents action, delays completion, and maintains chronic dissatisfaction. The perfectionist's voice insists that anything less than ideal performance is unacceptable, creating paralysis and procrastination while generating persistent feelings of inadequacy and failure. Imposter syndrome manifests as persistent thoughts that you are fraudulent, inadequate, or undeserving of your achievements. These thoughts dismiss evidence of competence while amplifying evidence of limitation, creating a mental environment where success feels accidental and failure feels inevitable. The comparison mind constantly measures your inside reality against other people's outside appearances, leading to persistent feelings of inadequacy and not enoughness. This mental habit ignores the fact that you have intimate knowledge of your own struggles and challenges while only seeing others' carefully curated public presentations. The comparison trap. Social media platforms have weaponized human psychology's natural tendency towards social comparison, creating digital environments specifically designed to generate feelings of inadequacy, FOMO, fear of missing out, and compulsive engagement behaviors that degrade mental health. The highlight reel effect occurs when you compare your real life, complete with struggles, mundane moments, and imperfections against the carefully curated, filtered, and edited presentations that others share on social platforms. This asymmetric comparison creates the false impression that everyone else is happier, more successful, and more fulfilled than you are. Algorithmic amplification means that social media platforms deliberately show you content that triggers strong emotional reactions, including envy, outrage, and inadequacy, because these emotions increase engagement and platform usage. The algorithms learn your psychological triggers and systematically expose you to content designed to create emotional activation rather than well-being. The validation addiction develops when your self-worth becomes dependent on likes, comments, shares, and other forms of digital approval. This external validation seeking creates anxiety when posts don't receive expected responses and trains your brain to constantly seek approval rather than developing internal confidence and self-acceptance. FOMO, fear of missing out, generates persistent anxiety about potentially better experiences, opportunities, or lifestyles that others appear to be enjoying. This fear prevents full engagement with your actual life circumstances while creating chronic dissatisfaction with your choices and experiences. The performance pressure created by social media transforms authentic life experiences into content creation opportunities, where the value of experiences becomes measured by their potential for social media engagement rather than personal satisfaction or growth. Digital comparison extends beyond social media to news consumption, online communities, and digital content that constantly exposes you to information about people who appear more successful, attractive, wealthy, or accomplished. This creates a persistent background noise of not enoughness that influences your mental environment throughout the day. Strategies for mental environment protection. Creating and maintaining a healthy mental environment requires both defensive strategies to block toxic inputs and offensive strategies to cultivate constructive mental patterns that support well-being and optimal performance. Information diet curation involves becoming as selective about your mental inputs as you would be about your physical nutrition. This means eliminating or dramatically reducing exposure to negative news, toxic social media, and inflammatory content while increasing consumption of educational, inspiring, and constructive information. Relationship boundary setting requires making conscious decisions about which relationships deserve your mental and emotional energy. This may involve reducing contact with consistently negative people, setting limits on emotional support provided to energy vampires, and prioritizing relationships that provide mutual benefit and positive influence. Mental input tracking involves monitoring how different information sources, conversations, and experiences affect your mood, energy, and mindset. This awareness allows you to make data-driven decisions about which inputs enhance your mental environment and which ones degrade it. The 24-hour rule for emotional reactions requires waiting a full day before responding to triggering information, conversations, or situations. This cooling-off period prevents impulsive reactions while allowing more thoughtful, strategic responses that protect your mental environment. Curated social media involves unfollowing accounts that consistently trigger comparison, negativity, or inadequacy while following accounts that provide inspiration, education, and positive perspective. Many people discover that reducing overall social media usage improves mental health more than any content curation strategy. Cultivating constructive mental patterns. Beyond protecting against negative inputs, optimal mental environment management involves actively cultivating thought patterns and mental habits that support clarity, resilience, and positive life creation. Gratitude practice systematically shifts your attention toward positive aspects of your life and circumstances while training your brain to notice and appreciate good things that might otherwise be overlooked. Regular gratitude exercises rewire neural pathways to default toward appreciation rather than complaint, fundamentally altering your baseline emotional state and life satisfaction. Cognitive reframing involves consciously interpreting events and circumstances in ways that support empowerment and growth rather than victimization and limitation. This mental discipline acknowledges that while you cannot always control external circumstances, you maintain complete sovereignty over the meaning you assign to those circumstances. Affirmative self-talk replaces critical internal dialogue with supportive, constructive mental messages. This practice is not about denying reality or ignoring genuine limitations but about speaking to yourself with the same kindness, encouragement, and realistic optimism you would offer a close friend facing similar circumstances. Mindfulness meditation develops the ability to observe your thoughts without becoming identified with them or controlled by them. This metacognitive awareness creates psychological distance from automatic thought patterns while increasing your capacity to choose which thoughts deserve attention and which should be allowed to pass without engagement. Mental rehearsal and visualization involve deliberately creating positive mental imagery of desired outcomes, successful performances, and ideal future scenarios. This practice leverages the brain's inability to distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual experiences, creating neural patterns that support confidence and optimal performance. Growth mindset cultivation, based on Carol Dweck's research, involves interpreting challenges, failures, and setbacks as opportunities for learning and development rather than evidence of fixed limitations. This mental framework transforms obstacles into valuable feedback while maintaining motivation and resilience during difficult periods, creating inner quiet in an outer world of noise. The ultimate goal of mental environment protection is the creation of inner quiet, a state of mental clarity, emotional stability, and psychological peace that persists regardless of external chaos and challenges. This inner quiet represents the foundation for creative thinking, wise decision-making, and genuine life satisfaction. Mental silence differs from the absence of thought. It represents a state where thoughts are clear, purposeful, and under conscious direction rather than automatic, reactive, and controlling. This mental mastery allows you to think about what you choose to think about rather than being thought of by your conditioning and circumstances. Emotional regulation skills enable you to experience your full range of emotions without being controlled or overwhelmed by them. This capacity allows appropriate emotional responses to circumstances while preventing emotional hijacking that leads to poor decisions and destructive behaviors. Psychological boundaries create clear separation between your internal experience and external influences, allowing you to receive information and perspectives without automatically absorbing them as truth or allowing them to disturb your mental equilibrium. These boundaries enable you to be open to new ideas while maintaining discernment about which ideas deserve integration into your worldview. The observer perspective involves developing the capacity to watch your own mental processes with curiosity and detachment rather than identifying completely with every thought and emotion that arises. This meta-awareness creates freedom from automatic mental patterns while increasing your ability to consciously choose responses rather than react unconsciously. Mental sanctuary creation involves establishing physical spaces, time periods, and practices that support inner quiet and mental restoration. This might include morning meditation practices, nature walks, journaling sessions, or any activity that allows for mental processing, integration, and renewal away from external demands and stimulation. Advanced mental environment strategies. Beyond basic mental hygiene, high-performing individuals develop sophisticated approaches to managing their psychological landscape that enable sustained excellence and well-being even under challenging circumstances. Mental diet design involves creating systematic exposure to specific types of information, perspectives, and ideas that support your goals and values. This might include regular reading of philosophy, exposure to inspiring biographies, consumption of educational content in your field, or engagement with artistic and creative works that expand your perspective. Cognitive rehearsal for challenging situations involves mentally practicing responses to likely stressors, conflicts, and challenging circumstances before they occur. This preparation creates neural pathways for desired responses while reducing the likelihood of reactive, emotion-driven behaviors when actual challenges arise. Energy protection protocols establish clear procedures for managing interactions with energy-draining people and situations. These protocols might include time limits for certain conversations, prepared responses for common manipulation tactics, or recovery practices to restore mental and emotional equilibrium after necessary but draining interactions. Mental decluttering practices involve regularly reviewing and releasing outdated beliefs, resolved conflicts, and mental commitments that no longer serve your current objectives and circumstances. This mental housekeeping prevents the accumulation of psychological baggage that creates ongoing cognitive load and emotional drag. Peak state engineering involves identifying the mental, emotional, and physical conditions that produce your optimal performance and systematically creating those conditions before important activities. This might include specific music, movement, breathing exercises, or mental preparation that reliably produces desired psychological states. Overcoming mental environment obstacles. Several common obstacles prevent people from establishing and maintaining healthy mental environments. Understanding these challenges enables more effective strategies for creating lasting change. Social pressure to remain informed creates guilt about reducing news consumption and limiting exposure to current events. However, most news consumption provides no actionable information while generating significant anxiety and mental disturbance. Overcoming this obstacle requires recognizing the distinction between being informed and being overwhelmed. FOMO, fear of missing out, prevents people from setting social media boundaries and limiting digital consumption. This fear is based on the false assumption that constant connection and information consumption is necessary for success and satisfaction when research demonstrates the opposite, that reduced digital engagement often improves both performance and well-being. Relationship guilt makes it difficult to reduce contact with toxic people, especially family members or long-standing friendships. This guilt stems from the mistaken belief that maintaining relationships requires unlimited availability and tolerance of negative behavior. Healthy relationships respect boundaries and mutual well-being rather than demanding one-sided sacrifice. Addiction to drama and intensity creates unconscious seeking of conflict, crisis, and emotional turmoil because calm stability feels boring or unfamiliar. This pattern, often rooted in childhood conditioning, requires conscious rewiring to appreciate and cultivate peace rather than chaos. Perfectionist self-criticism persists because people believe that harsh self-judgment motivates improvement, when research shows it actually impairs performance while increasing anxiety and procrastination. Replacing self-criticism with self-compassion requires challenging deeply held beliefs about the relationship between suffering and achievement. The compound returns of mental environment mastery. The benefits of protecting and cultivating your mental environment compound dramatically over time, creating exponential improvements in performance, relationships, and life satisfaction. Emotional resilience increases as you develop the capacity to maintain equilibrium and perspective during challenging circumstances. This resilience allows you to navigate setbacks without being derailed while maintaining consistent performance over time. Decision quality improves when your mental environment is clear and stable rather than clouded by negativity, comparison, and emotional reactivity. Clear thinking enables more strategic choices that align with long-term objectives rather than short-term emotional relief. Creative capacity expands as mental space becomes available for original thinking, innovative problem-solving, and artistic expression. A cluttered, negative mental environment suppresses creativity while a clear, positive environment enables breakthrough thinking. Relationship quality improves as you become less reactive, more empathetic, and better able to establish healthy boundaries. Your improved mental state makes you a more positive influence on others while attracting higher quality relationships into your life. Life satisfaction increases independent of external circumstances as you develop the ability to find meaning, appreciate experiences, and maintain a positive perspective regardless of temporary challenges or setbacks. Chapter 9. Sustaining a low-noise lifestyle. The ultimate challenge is not creating temporary improvements in focus, clarity, and intentional living, It is sustaining these improvements over months, years, and decades despite constant pressure to return to old patterns and habits. This chapter addresses the critical question that determines whether your transformation will be permanent or temporary. How do you maintain simplicity, focus, and intentionality as a way of life rather than as a temporary experiment? The answer lies in understanding that sustainable change requires systems rather than willpower, identity transformation rather than behavioral modification, and environmental design rather than personal discipline. This chapter will provide the frameworks, practices, and mental models necessary to make low-noise living your permanent reality rather than a fleeting aspiration. The difference between temporary change and permanent transformation. Most people approach personal development as a series of discrete changes, adopting new habits, eliminating bad behaviors, and optimizing various life areas. While these changes can produce short-term results, they rarely create lasting transformation because they fail to address the underlying systems, beliefs, and identity that generate behavior. Temporary change operates at the behavioral level, where you consciously force yourself to act differently than your natural inclinations would dictate. This approach requires constant willpower and vigilance, making it inherently unsustainable because willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day and varies with stress levels, fatigue, and emotional state. Permanent transformation operates at the identity level, where you fundamentally change who you believe yourself to be. When your identity shifts from someone trying to be more focused to someone who values and protects their attention, behavior changes naturally flow from this new self-concept without requiring conscious effort or willpower. The identity-behavior feedback loop explains why temporary changes often fail. When you attempt behavioral changes that conflict with your core identity, you experience psychological dissonance that creates stress and resistance. Eventually, your behavior regresses to match your identity rather than your identity expanding to match new behaviors. Successful transformation requires deliberately reshaping your identity to align with desired behaviors. This identity work involves examining and updating the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you value, and what kind of life you want to create. Building systems that support low-noise living. Sustainable excellence requires systems that operate automatically rather than relying on daily decisions and willpower. These systems should make desired behaviors the path of least resistance while creating friction for behaviors you want to reduce or eliminate. Environmental design involves structuring your physical and digital spaces to support low-noise living by default. This includes removing temptations, reducing decision points, and creating environmental cues that trigger desired behaviors. When your environment is properly designed, good choices become automatic while bad choices require conscious effort. The default setting principle suggests that people usually accept whatever is easiest or requires least effort. By making low-noise behaviors the default option, phones in another room overnight, email checking scheduled rather than constant, social media access through browser rather than apps, you leverage this principle to support your transformation. Habit stacking connects new desired behaviors to existing automatic habits, creating behavioral chains that don't require conscious initiation. For example, connecting your morning gratitude practice to your coffee routine or linking device-free evenings to dinner preparation creates automatic triggers for desired behaviors. Accountability systems provide external structure when internal motivation wanes. This might include regular check-ins with an accountability partner, public commitments that create social pressure, or tracking systems that provide clear feedback on adherence to low-noise principles. Scheduled reviews ensure that your systems remain aligned with your priorities as circumstances change. Weekly, monthly, and quarterly reviews allow you to assess what's working, identify areas needing adjustment, and recommit to your low-noise lifestyle before significant drift occurs. Creating routines that reinforce intentionality. Daily routines serve as the structural foundation for low-noise living by establishing consistent patterns that support focus, clarity, and purposeful action. These routines should be designed to protect your most valuable resources, time, energy, and attention while ensuring regular investment in activities that matter most. Morning routines set the tone for your entire day by establishing whether you will operate proactively or reactively. Device-free mornings that include reflection, planning, and important work before engaging with external demands create momentum for intentional living throughout the day. Evening routines facilitate proper closure of the workday, mental processing of experiences, and preparation for quality sleep. These routines should include technology disconnection, reflection on the day's experiences, and preparation for the following day to prevent morning decision fatigue. Weekly planning sessions create space for strategic thinking and priority alignment before the week's demands consume your attention. These sessions should review accomplishments, assess priority alignment, and establish clear intentions for the upcoming week. The ritual versus routine distinction recognizes that some practices benefit from being treated as sacred, meaningful events rather than mere habitual behaviors. Investing practices like morning reflection or weekly planning with intentionality and significance increases their psychological impact and adherence rates. Flexibility within structure allows routines to adapt to changing circumstances without complete collapse. Having core non-negotiable elements that remain consistent while allowing peripheral elements to flex creates sustainability that rigid routines cannot achieve. Navigating social pressure and cultural resistance. One of the greatest challenges to sustaining low-noise living is the social and cultural pressure to conform to mainstream patterns of constant availability, perpetual busyness, and reactive living. Successfully maintaining your transformation requires strategies for navigating this resistance while maintaining important relationships. The explanation versus justification distinction is crucial for boundary maintenance. You can briefly explain your choices without extensively justifying them or seeking permission for living according to your values. Simple statements like, "I don't check email after 6 p.m." or "I limit social media use," delivered with quiet confidence usually suffice. Finding your tribe involves connecting with others who share your commitment to intentional living. These relationships provide support, accountability, and normalization of choices that may seem strange or extreme to mainstream culture. Online communities, local meetup groups, or professional associations focused on productivity and well-being can provide this social support. Leading by example rather than preaching your philosophy often proves more effective for influencing others and reducing social friction. When people observe the positive results of your low-noise lifestyle, your focus, calm, and accomplishments, they become curious rather than defensive. Setting boundaries without apology involves communicating your limits clearly and kindly while refusing to feel guilty for protecting your resources. This might mean declining invitations, limiting availability, or saying no to requests that conflict with your priorities. The social capital investment principle suggests that strong relationships built on genuine connection and mutual value creation can withstand the friction created by your boundaries. People who truly care about you will respect your choices, while those who resist your boundaries may not be providing sufficient value to warrant accommodation. Handling setbacks and maintaining momentum. Perfect adherence to low-noise principles is impossible and unnecessary. Sustainable transformation requires strategies for recovering from inevitable setbacks while maintaining overall progress toward your vision of intentional living. The progress versus perfection mindset acknowledges that consistent imperfect action produces better long-term results than sporadic perfect performance. Allowing yourself to have off days or periods without abandoning your overall commitment prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that leads to complete collapse after minor setbacks. Recovery protocols establish clear procedures for getting back on track after deviations from your low-noise practices. These protocols might include a simple review of what triggered the lapse, recommitment to core principles, and immediate implementation of one high-impact low-noise behavior to rebuild momentum. The learning orientation treats setbacks as valuable data about your triggers, weak points, and necessary system adjustments rather than evidence of personal failure. This perspective transforms failures into feedback that improves future performance. Compassionate self-assessment involves honestly evaluating your adherence to low-noise principles while maintaining self-compassion rather than self-criticism. Research consistently shows that self-compassion increases motivation and performance while self-criticism undermines both. The resilience-building process acknowledges that encountering and overcoming setbacks actually strengthens your capacity for long-term success by developing skills, confidence, and recovery strategies that prevent future lapses. Evolving your practice over time. Low-noise living is not a static destination but an evolving practice that deepens and matures over time. As your circumstances change and your capabilities develop, your approach to cutting noise should become more sophisticated and aligned with your expanding vision. The mastery progression involves moving from conscious competence, deliberately practicing low-noise principles, to unconscious competence, automatically operating from low-noise values without conscious effort. This progression requires time and consistent practice but eventually produces effortless excellence. Regular experimentation with new approaches prevents stagnation while allowing you to discover practices that better fit your unique circumstances and preferences. This might involve testing different morning routines, trying new productivity systems, or experimenting with various approaches to digital minimalism. The refinement process involves periodically reviewing your low-noise practices to identify what's working well, what needs adjustment, and what should be eliminated. This ensures that your systems remain aligned with your current priorities rather than maintaining practices that serve previous life phases. Integration with life changes requires adapting your low-noise practices to new circumstances like career transitions, relationship changes, or major life events. Rigid adherence to practices designed for different circumstances creates unnecessary stress and often leads to complete abandonment of low-noise principles. The teaching effect suggests that explaining and sharing your low-noise philosophy with others deepens your own understanding and commitment. Whether through writing, speaking, or informal conversations, articulating your principles to others strengthens your internal clarity and conviction. Measuring long-term success. Traditional productivity metrics often fail to capture the true benefits of low-noise living, which manifest as increased life satisfaction, improved relationships, and greater sense of purpose rather than merely increased output or efficiency. Quality of life indicators include factors like life satisfaction, relationship quality, physical and mental health, sense of purpose, and alignment between values and daily activities. These holistic measures provide better assessment of low-noise living success than narrow productivity metrics. Energy sustainability over time assesses whether you can maintain high performance over months and years without burnout or exhaustion. Sustainable energy patterns indicate that your low-noise practices are working, while declining energy suggests necessary adjustments. Decision quality measurement evaluates whether your choices align with long-term objectives and reflect your values, or whether you frequently experience regret about how you invest time and energy. Improved decision quality indicates effective low-noise living. Creative output and innovation capacity often increase with low-noise living as mental space becomes available for original thinking and deep work. Tracking your creative projects, innovations, and breakthrough ideas provides evidence of cognitive benefits. Personal growth velocity measures how quickly you're developing new capabilities, expanding your perspective, and achieving meaningful objectives. Acceleration in personal growth often follows from the sustained focus and energy that low-noise living enables. Creating your personal low-noise philosophy. The most sustainable transformations emerge from deeply held personal philosophy rather than externally imposed rules or temporary motivation. Developing your unique low-noise philosophy provides the foundation for lifelong commitment to intentional living. Values clarification work involves identifying and articulating the principles that matter most to you independent of social expectations or cultural conditioning. These values serve as decision-making criteria and provide motivation during challenging periods. Vision development creates a compelling picture of your ideal life that pulls you forward rather than relying solely on pushing away from current dissatisfaction. This positive vision makes daily low-noise choices feel like movement towards something desirable rather than mere restriction or discipline. Personal operating principles distill your low-noise philosophy into clear guidelines that direct daily decisions and behaviors. These principles might address how you use technology, manage relationships, allocate time, or respond to opportunities and demands. The narrative you tell yourself about who you are and what kind of life you're creating determines which behaviors feel natural and which feel forced. Deliberately crafting an empowering narrative that frames you as the intentional architect of your life rather than a victim of circumstances supports sustainable transformation. Regular philosophical reflection ensures that your low-noise practices remain connected to deeper purpose rather than becoming mere habits lacking meaning or motivation. Periodic contemplation of why you pursue low-noise living renews commitment and prevents drift toward old patterns. The compound effect of sustained low-noise living. The long-term benefits of maintaining low-noise practices compound exponentially over time, creating dramatic differences in life outcomes, accomplishments, and satisfaction compared to conventional reactive living. Career acceleration often results from the sustained focus, strategic thinking, and consistent high-quality work that low-noise living enables. The ability to deeply focus on important work while filtering out distractions creates competitive advantages that compound into extraordinary career results. Relationship depth increases as you have more mental and emotional bandwidth for genuine connection, empathetic listening, and quality time with important people. The reduction in digital distraction and social obligation allows for fewer but far more meaningful relationships. Health improvements manifest through better sleep, reduced stress, more consistent exercise, and healthier eating patterns that emerge when you have mental space and energy for self-care rather than being constantly overwhelmed by demands and distractions. Financial progress accelerates through more thoughtful spending decisions, better investment choices, and increased earning potential from improved professional performance. The mental clarity that comes from low-noise living extends to the financial domain as well. Creative achievement reaches new levels as sustained focus and mental space allow for deep work on meaningful projects. The greatest creative achievements require extended periods of concentrated attention that only low-noise living can provide consistently. Life satisfaction increases independent of external achievements as you develop the capacity to appreciate experiences, maintain perspective during challenges, and find meaning in daily activities. This intrinsic satisfaction provides sustainable well-being that external success alone cannot deliver. Conclusion. Silence the noise. Amplify your life. You have reached the end of this book, but you stand at the beginning of something far more significant, the beginning of a life lived on your terms, guided by your values, and directed toward your highest potential. Everything you have read in these pages is merely information until you transform it into action. The question now is not whether you understand the principles of cutting noise, but whether you will implement them with the commitment and consistency required to create lasting transformation. The core principles revisited. The foundation of low-noise living rests on several fundamental truths that, while simple to understand, require courage and discipline to fully implement in a world designed to maximize distraction, fragmentation, and reactivity. Noise is not just sound, it is any input, demand, or distraction that fragments your attention, drains your energy, or diverts you from what matters most. Mental, emotional, digital, and social noise all compete for your most precious resources and will steal your life if you allow it. Your time is finite and irreplaceable. Every hour spent on low-value activities is an hour permanently lost to more meaningful pursuits. The theft of your time occurs with your implicit permission through poor boundaries, reactive decision-making, and failure to protect your calendar with appropriate vigilance. Energy management supersedes time management. Having abundant time means nothing if your energy is depleted. Strategic energy allocation to activities that generate rather than drain your capacity creates sustainable high performance and life satisfaction. The power of no cannot be overstated. Saying no to good opportunities creates space for great ones. Every strategic no protects resources that can be invested in activities aligned with your highest priorities and deepest values. Digital technology is designed to capture your attention. You are in an asymmetric battle against teams of specialists whose job is to keep you scrolling, clicking, and consuming. Winning this battle requires systematic boundaries and deliberate design of your digital environment. Physical and mental clutter create cognitive load. Simplifying your environment, commitments, and information diet frees mental resources for creative thinking, strategic planning, and meaningful relationships. Ruthless prioritization is essential. Not all activities are equal, and most aren't worth your time. Focusing exclusively on the few activities that produce disproportionate returns requires the courage to disappoint some people and ignore some opportunities. Mental environment determines life quality. Protecting your psychological space from toxic relationships, negative self-talk, and comparison traps is essential for sustained well-being and optimal performance. Sustainability requires systems, not willpower. Temporary changes based on motivation and discipline inevitably fail. Permanent transformation requires identity shifts, environmental design, and automatic systems that make desired behaviors the path of least resistance. The path forward to move from information to implementation. Understanding these principles intellectually accomplishes nothing. Transformation requires implementation, and implementation requires a systematic approach that builds momentum through early successes while establishing foundations for long-term sustainability. Start immediately. Waiting for the perfect moment or ideal circumstances guarantees that you will never begin. Implementation should start today with one simple change that demonstrates commitment to your transformation. Begin with high-impact, low-resistance changes. Early successes build confidence and motivation for more challenging modifications. Clearing your workspace, turning off notifications, or blocking distraction-free work time provides immediate benefits that encourage continued progress. Establish non-negotiable boundaries. Identify the few practices that will have the greatest impact on your life quality, and make them absolutely non-negotiable regardless of circumstances or external pressure. These core commitments provide stability during challenging periods. Build systems before relying on discipline. Design your environment, schedule, and routines to support desired behaviors automatically rather than depending on daily willpower and motivation. Good systems make success inevitable, while poor systems make failure likely. Accept imperfection while maintaining commitment. Perfect adherence to low-noise principles is neither possible nor necessary. What matters is overall trajectory and recovery speed after inevitable setbacks, not flawless execution. Measure progress honestly. Regular assessment of your adherence to low-noise practices, energy levels, and life satisfaction provides feedback necessary for continuous improvement. Honest measurement reveals what's working and what needs adjustment. Connect with like-minded individuals. Transformation is difficult in isolation. Finding community, accountability partners, or mentors who share your commitment to intentional living provides support during challenging periods and celebrates progress during successful ones. The extraordinary life that awaits. The benefits of cutting noise and living intentionally extend far beyond improved productivity or reduced stress. This transformation fundamentally alters the quality and trajectory of your entire life in ways that compound dramatically over time. Reclaimed time allows you to invest in relationships that matter, pursue creative projects that inspire you, develop skills that expand your potential, and simply be present for the experiences that make life meaningful. The hundreds of hours per year recovered from eliminated noise represent the raw material for building an extraordinary life. Sustained energy enables consistent high performance without burnout or exhaustion. When your energy is strategically managed and protected, you maintain the vitality necessary for pursuing ambitious goals while preserving capacity for health, relationships, and personal renewal. Mental clarity creates space for deep thinking, creative problem-solving, and strategic planning that are impossible in noisy, fragmented mental environments. This clarity produces better decisions, innovative solutions, and breakthrough insights that accelerate progress toward your most important objectives. Emotional well-being emerges from reduced comparison, eliminated toxic relationships, and protected mental space. When you stop consuming anxiety-inducing news, engaging with energy vampires, and measuring yourself against others' curated presentations, you discover genuine satisfaction with your own life and circumstances. Meaningful relationships deepen when you have mental and emotional bandwidth for genuine connection, empathetic listening, and quality time. The reduction in superficial social obligations creates space for fewer but far more meaningful relationships that provide mutual growth and support. Professional excellence follows from sustained focus, strategic thinking, and consistent high-quality work. The ability to concentrate deeply on important work while filtering out distractions creates competitive advantages that compound into extraordinary career results over time. Creative achievement reaches new levels as you gain the mental space and sustained attention necessary for meaningful projects. The greatest creative works require extended periods of concentrated focus that only low-noise living can consistently provide. Authentic living becomes possible when you align your daily activities with your deepest values rather than constantly reacting to external demands. This alignment produces the sense of purpose, integrity, and self-respect that defines a life well lived. The cost of inaction. While the benefits of implementing these principles are profound, it is equally important to understand the costs of not taking action. The consequences of continued noise-filled, reactive living accumulate over time, creating compound losses that are often invisible until significant damage has occurred. Lost potential represents opportunities never pursued, capabilities never developed, and contributions never made because your time and energy were consumed by noise and distraction. Years can pass with little meaningful progress while you remain perpetually busy with low-value activities. Damaged health results from chronic stress, poor sleep, inadequate exercise, and nutritional choices made under time pressure and mental exhaustion. The long-term health consequences of noise-filled living often don't manifest until damage is already significant. Superficial relationships replace deep connections when you lack mental and emotional resources for genuine intimacy and presence. Years can pass in the company of others without ever experiencing true connection or mutual growth. Career mediocrity becomes inevitable when you cannot sustain the focus, strategic thinking, and consistent excellence necessary for professional distinction. Talent and intelligence mean little without the ability to concentrate them on important work. Regret accumulates as you recognize the distance between the life you're living and the life you could be living if you had the courage to cut the noise and live intentionally. The saddest words are, "It's too late," or, "If only I had." Exhaustion replaces vitality as chronic overcommitment, poor boundaries, and reactive living drain your energy faster than you can restore it. This state of perpetual depletion becomes normalized until you forget what genuine vitality feels like. Your moment of decision. This book has provided you with knowledge, frameworks, and specific practices for cutting noise and reclaiming your life. However, knowledge without action produces nothing. You now face a choice that will determine the trajectory of your future. Will you implement these principles with commitment and consistency, or will you return to the comfortable familiarity of noise-filled, reactive living? This is not a dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime decision. Instead, it is a series of small daily choices that compound over time to create either an extraordinary life or a mediocre one. Each morning, you choose whether to check your phone immediately or protect the first hour for important work. Each time someone makes a request, you choose whether to say yes automatically or evaluate it against your priorities. Each evening, you choose whether to scroll mindlessly or engage in restoration and preparation for the next day. These seemingly small choices accumulate into the story of your life. The person who consistently chooses to protect their time, energy, and attention will live a fundamentally different life than the person who constantly accommodates external demands and accepts endless distraction. The transformation you seek will not happen overnight. It requires patience, persistence, and the willingness to continue implementing these principles even when results are not immediately visible. However, if you maintain commitment to low-noise living, you will eventually reach a tipping point where the new patterns become automatic, the benefits become undeniable, and the old way of living becomes unthinkable. The power of starting now. The perfect moment to begin does not exist. There will always be projects to complete, obligations to fulfill, and circumstances that seem less than ideal for major life changes. Waiting for the perfect moment guarantees that you will never begin. Instead, recognize that this moment, right now, is the perfect moment to take one small action that demonstrates your commitment to transformation. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when circumstances improve. Now. What is the single most impactful action you could take in the next 24 hours to begin cutting noise from your life? Perhaps it is turning off all non-essential notifications on your devices. Blocking the first 2 hours of tomorrow morning for your most important work. Saying no to one commitment that drains energy without providing value. Removing social media apps from your phone. Clearing your workspace of all clutter and distractions. Establishing a device-free bedroom policy starting tonight. Scheduling a weekly planning session for systematic priority alignment. Unsubscribing from email lists and news sources that generate anxiety. Setting boundaries with one energy-draining relationship. Creating a morning routine that begins without digital distraction. Choose one action. Just one. And implement it today. Tomorrow, choose another. Next week, add a third. This incremental approach builds momentum while preventing the overwhelm that leads to abandonment of transformation efforts. If you're finding value in these insights on transforming pressure into performance, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. Grab the book of Cut the Noise, get ruthless with your time and energy, and learn how to protect what matters most, your time and energy. Perfect for your commute, workout, or whenever you need a reality check on where your focus is going. Or pick up the book if you want to underline, highlight, and revisit the strategies that'll help you reclaim your life. Check out the description below. A call to courage. Living differently than the masses requires courage. Saying no when others expect yes requires courage. Protecting your time when culture celebrates busyness requires courage. Limiting technology when society normalizes digital addiction requires courage. Simplifying when consumerism encourages accumulation requires courage. This courage is not the absence of fear or doubt. It is the willingness to act according to your values despite fear, social pressure, and uncertainty about outcomes. It is choosing the difficult path of intentional living over the easy path of reactive conformity. You will face resistance. From others who feel judged by your choices, from parts of yourself that crave comfortable familiarity, from circumstances that test your commitment. This resistance is not evidence that you're on the wrong path. It is confirmation that you're attempting something worthwhile. Every person who has achieved extraordinary results, or created an exceptional life has faced similar resistance. What distinguishes them is not the absence of obstacles but their willingness to persist despite them. You possess this same capacity for persistence. The question is whether you will exercise it. The invitation. You are invited to join a different kind of life, one characterized by presence rather than distraction, intention rather than reaction, depth rather than superficiality, and meaning rather than mere busyness. This life is not reserved for a select few with special advantages or unique circumstances. It is available to anyone willing to make different choices than the surrounding culture encourages. The path is clear. The principles are proven. The practices are specific. What remains is your decision and your action. Will you continue allowing noise to steal your time, fragment your attention, and drain your energy? Will you accept the mediocrity that comes from reactive, distracted living? Will you reach the end of your life wondering what you could have accomplished, created, or experienced if you had lived with greater intention and focus? Or will you take control of your most precious resources, your time, energy, and attention, and invest them in activities that align with your deepest values and highest potential? Will you build the systems, establish the boundaries, and make the daily choices necessary for sustainable transformation? Will you create a life that reflects your conscious design rather than accepting whatever results from unconscious reaction? The choice is entirely yours. But understand this: every day you delay is a day lost to noise, a day that could have been invested in building the life you truly want to live. Your next steps. Close this book and take one action. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Immediate actions, next 24 hours. Identify your single biggest source of noise, digital, social, mental, or physical. Eliminate or reduce this noise source immediately. Delete the app, set the boundary, clear the clutter. Protect tomorrow morning by scheduling your most important work before engaging with external demands. Remove one low-value commitment from your calendar to create space for what matters. Share your commitment with one person who will support your transformation. This week, complete the Chapter 1 Noise Audit to identify all major sources of distraction and energy drain. Implement one practice from each chapter that resonates most strongly with your situation. Establish your core morning and evening routines that will anchor your low-noise lifestyle. Design your environment to support focused work and intentional living. Say no to at least one request that would have received automatic yes in the past. This month, build comprehensive systems for managing time, energy, and attention. Establish clear boundaries around technology, relationships, and commitments. Create accountability structures through partners, tracking, or community. Review and refine your practices based on what's producing results. Celebrate progress and recommit to continued transformation. This year, deepen your practice until low-noise living becomes your natural default. Continuously optimize your systems and routines for better results. Help others by sharing what you've learned and supporting their transformations. Measure transformation through quality of life, not just productivity metrics. Live the proof that intentional, low-noise living creates extraordinary results. The noise will never stop demanding your attention. Technology will continue advancing in sophistication and addictiveness. Social pressures will persist. Cultural messages promoting busyness, distraction, and reactive living will remain constant. What can change? What must change is your response to these forces. You can choose to be a deliberate architect of your life rather than a passive consumer of whatever culture, technology, and circumstance provide by default. This transformation is not easy. If it were, everyone would do it. But it is absolutely worth the effort, the discomfort, and the courage it requires. The life that awaits on the other side of noise, characterized by clarity, presence, purpose, and genuine satisfaction, is worth any price you must pay to achieve it. You have the knowledge. You have the tools. You have the capability. What you need now is the decision and the action. Silence the noise. Amplify your life. Start today. Do less. Live more. The rest of your life begins now. Make it count. About implementing this book. This book is not meant to be read once and placed on a shelf. It is designed to be a practical manual that you return to repeatedly as you implement and refine your low-noise lifestyle. Here are suggestions for maximizing its value. First, reading. Read through completely to understand the comprehensive framework and identify practices that resonate most strongly with your current situation. Implementation phase. Work through one chapter at a time, implementing the action plans and building systems before moving to the next chapter. Regular reference. Return to specific chapters when facing challenges in particular areas. Digital overwhelm, relationship boundaries, prioritization struggles, or mental environment protection. Periodic review. Revisit the entire book quarterly to refresh your commitment, discover insights you missed initially, and deepen your practice. Share and teach. Discuss the principles with others, teach what you're learning, and create accountability through community engagement. Continuous evolution. Recognize that your low-noise practice will evolve over time as your circumstances change and your capabilities develop. Use this book as a foundation for ongoing growth rather than a fixed set of rules. Your transformation begins with a single step. Take that step now. Then take another. And another. Until one day, you look back and realize you have created a life of intention, focus, and meaning that seemed impossible when you started. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You have reached the end of this book. Now take the first step of your journey. Welcome to your new life. Cut the noise, get ruthless with your time and energy.